gentlemen, good afternoon. You'd like to welcome all of our guests here on a bright Saturday afternoon to the Makati Shangri-La. Thank you so much for joining us for today's conference. And ladies and gentlemen, as you begin over here, we in the Philippines would like to welcome you with a warm mabuhay. Thank you so much for joining us. And before we start, I would like to ask just one big favor from everyone here right now, and that's take a good look at the good-looking person beside you on the left side or the right side. Please take a good look at the person beside you and tell them how handsome or how beautiful they look this afternoon, please. And before everything else, since this summit is all about getting to know other people and networking, may I invite you just for 2 minutes, please stand up, shake somebody's hand, give your calling cards, give your business cards, just to get to know them a bit better. Please go ahead. I'm sure you want to meet some other people here today. Take that opportunity, 2-3 minutes just to say hello. Take a picture with the ambassador, with the president of the Indian Chamber of Commerce. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we will discuss the emerging techniques and challenges in the fields of agriculture, digital technologies, innovation, startups, health, and pharmaceuticals, in plenary sessions to be composed of experts in all of these fields. And to officially welcome us here today, ladies and gentlemen, at our Philippines-India Business Conclave and the 4th ASEAN India Business Summit, it is my pleasure to introduce my good friend, the President of the Philippine-Indian Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines. A round of applause, please, for Mr. Rex Daryanani.
Thank you very much, RJ, my good friend from college, amazing host, debonair. Thank you, sir. His Excellency Jaideep Mazumdar, our beloved ambassador of India to the Philippines, Mr. Vivek Singhal and members of the visiting business delegation from India, officers and members of the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce, Philippines Incorporated, officers and members of FICCI India, CII, and ASOCHAM, my good friend Pushkar Mishra of the India Business Forum, our dear friends from the Philippine Center of Entrepreneurship, Go Negosyo, our partners in industry for a better Philippines, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the Board of Directors and members of the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and our partner organizers, namely the India Business Forum, AIBC, Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Go Negosyo, allow me to welcome all of you, most especially members of the visiting delegation from India to our beautiful Philippines. We sincerely hope that you are enjoying your stay so far and have gotten to experience Filipino hospitality at its best. I welcome you to the Philippines-India Business Conclave and 4th ASEAN-India Business Summit. Today's summit is something that many have been looking forward to, as it will provide us all with a better picture of the many strengths of both India and the Philippines when it comes to agriculture, digital technology, startups, health, and pharmaceuticals. We will also be having a forum on ASEAN and India and how the Look East policy of India is affecting many of us. Most important is today's summit will give us a chance to explore the different industries where India is no doubt one of the global leaders, and to see how this industry leadership can be leveraged to grow in the Philippines. A good understanding of this will surely be the catalyst for us to grow these very same industries here in partnership with our Indian brothers and sisters, and vice versa. As we explore possibilities, we are confident that this will lead to a lot of back-end and follow-up work to match capabilities and needs in a manner that is bilateral and mutually beneficial. During the visit of President Rodrigo Roa Duterte to Delhi last year, I had the chance to speak to him about the great possibilities between our two countries. He said in very clear terms that he is excited to work closely with India on many fronts and assured businessmen of his full support with this endeavor. With government policy set, it is now our role in the business sector to make this happen. Let us roll up our sleeves and take Philippines-India business relations and people-to-people engagement to the next level. I call on each one of you here today to share this vision and goal and be the catalyst to further strengthen the business foundation and cooperation of both India and the Philippines. Once again, welcome to Manila, and we look forward to a very fruitful engagement and to the establishment of long friendships during this visit. Let us begin the summit. Thank you, Dhanyavad, maraming salamat po, mabuhay and namaste.
Namaste. Thank you so much as well, President Rex Daryanani. And again, I think we should all give Rex a round of applause, please. Exemplary work for the Filipino-Indian Chamber of Commerce. We look forward to growing our business relationship with our Indian brothers and sisters through the support of Rex Daryanani and the Philippine-Indian Chamber of Commerce. Our next address is from the esteemed leader of the business delegation from India and the CEO of GMR Construction. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause, please, for Mr. Vivek Singhal.
First of all, I'm very delighted to see a full house. Mr. Jaideep Majumdar, Ambassador of India, Mr. Rex Daryanani, President of FICCI, Philippines, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Magadang Hapon. As a leader of the Indian industry business delegation to the Philippines, I feel honored and privileged to address Philippine-India Business Conclave and ASEAN-India Business Summit. We are glad to join this delegation, accompanying Honorable President of India, and be the part of this ceremonious occasion celebrating 17 years of Indo-Philippine relations. We had very productive meetings with the Secretaries of Department of Agriculture, Health, Information, Communication and Technology, Science and Technology, and Trade and Industry. We would like to thank Mr. Jaideep Majumdar, Ambassador of India to Manila, officials of Indian Embassy, and our partner association in Philippines for organizing this wonderful program and other business engagements. Needless to say, India and Philippines share cordial bilateral relationships with the expanding cooperation across various sectors like agriculture, food processing, IT, pharmaceutical, infrastructure, manufacturing, automobile, renewable energy, tourism, scientific and technological services, logistics, etc. The economic relations between the two countries have been growing rapidly for more than a decade now. It is being increasingly felt that given the market potential and a given common lingua franca, there is a scope for a lot more accelerated growth, provided the current momentum is not only sustained, but also enhanced through continuing bilateral negotiations on trade, investment, economic, scientific, technical cooperation between the two nations. In this context, it will be pertinent to mention here that the India and Philippine trade in 2018 and 19 were valued about $2.4 billion. Thank you for joining us today. My good wishes and for the hopeful future of a global cooperation, bringing the India and Philippines trade ties. Thank you very much.
Again, thank you so much, Mr. Vivek Singhal. Hopefully, this is the first of many visits here to the Philippines as we increase the ties between our countries. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to formally open the summit, we are very pleased and honored to welcome the Ambassador of India to the Philippines, His Excellency Jaideep Majumdar. Let's give a round of applause, please.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Mr. Rex Daryanani, President of FICCI Philippines. I think it would not be wrong to say that this would not have been possible without him and his chamber. We have many partners who have contributed in a great deal to this effort in getting you all here. I will come to that. No less is FICCI India and Mr. Singhal. Thank you very much for organizing this team and leading from the front in your deliberations with your counterparts here. Go Negocio, of course, who have been very, very supportive of this enterprise. AIBC, you see them all there. The associated chambers from India, SHM, CII, our own IBF, which I feel, I feel like a parent of IBF because it happened during my tenure here, and we now have a good membership of about 50 odd Indian companies who are members of the India Business Forum Philippines. And all the ministry, the departments, DTI, Department of Finance, Agriculture, who have so partnered us, I would like to give a big thank you to all of them. Often when I speak publicly, people get confused whether I'm India's ambassador to the Philippines or Philippines ambassador to India. Because I often say, oh, this is a great relationship that's just waiting to be explored further. The Philippines is a wonderful country of warm, hospitable people where we have so much in common. There is democracy, we have the rule of law, we believe in the same values, and has a growth rate of +6% for so many years, has a dynamic young population, and that there's so much in commonality with India. In fact, last year when I was in Delhi, I came to speak to FICCI, and they were asking me, are you really the India's ambassador to the Philippines? But I believe that it's a two-way thing. You have to sell India to the Philippines as well as you have to sell Philippines to India. And that is how the relationship will grow. And I see this happening before my eyes. President Ramnath Kovind has had a fabulous state visit so far. We had wonderful discussions with President Duterte yesterday that covered many areas, and this business forum is the perfect complement to the understandings we have had at the political and strategic level, at the defense and security partnership that we have forged yesterday, and at the people-to-people level, where some of you might have seen the event today morning that was organized by FICCI, where we had the babies with the liver transplant, as well as the Mahavi Philippine Foundation, where the Jaipur fort is fitted onto more than 15,000 Filipinos so far, free of cost. So these are the different planks of our relationship, and the business plank is going to be increasingly a very important one. President himself sets a lot of store by it. Therefore, he has brought this large, well-represented business delegation to the Philippines, and he will be with us today evening at the plenary, where he will address you. So, all in all, it looks like the business relationship is also taking off. Journalists, by nature, they come to you and say, okay, so how many $1 billion of investments is this going to result in? So I turn to them and say, well, if we add up the incomes that will be generated by all the agricultural MOUs that we are going to sign, all the knowledge and technology transfers that are going to happen during this visit, it will result in income generation for people of billions of dollars. And I think that is very important. Thank you. I leave you to your deliberations, and thank you for inviting me to address you, and a very good afternoon ahead of you. Thank you.
Again, thank you so much, Ambassador Majumdar, our Indian ambassador to the Philippines and our de facto Philippines ambassador to India at the same time. Sir, thank you so much for your support over the past couple of years. And of course, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the Philippines-India Business Conclave and ASEAN-India Business Summit is now officially open. A round of applause, please. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us here today. And we are very excited for our first forum this afternoon. That's all about digital technologies, innovation, and startups. And I'm sure just to get this forum started required a lot of digital technology via Facebook, via email, via Facebook Messenger. I'm sure nobody will get through this forum right now without looking at his Facebook even just once. So ladies and gentlemen, today we are very curious to find out what is the state of digital technology both in India and in the Philippines. We begin with our first plenary session with the topic of digital technologies, innovation, and startups. Our panel joining us here on stage are prominent digital entrepreneurs from both India and the Philippines, beginning with the chairman of HGS and NASCOM BPO, Mr. Partha Sarkar. Joining Mr. Sarkar on stage is the CEO of Southeast Asia and Middle East Oyo Rooms, Mr. Mandar Vaidya. We have the delivery head of Tech Mahindra, Mr. Austin Anthony Joseph. The founder and CEO of Blessing Palm Private Limited, Mr. Shaji Kurungatil Varghese. The country head of Wipro Limited, Mr. Asim Roy. The Philippine country head of Tata Consultancy Services, Mr. Shiju Varghese. On the Philippine side, please welcome the CEO of Grab Philippines, Mr. Brian Koo. The CEO of GCash, Mr. Anthony Thomas. And the CEO of TagCash, Mr. Mark Vernon. And in just a few minutes, we will also be joined by the CEO of Lazada Philippines, Mr. Ray Alimurong. And to handle our plenary session on digital technologies, innovation, and startups, I'd like to welcome here on stage a good friend of mine, the creator and host of ASEAN Philippines, The Final Pitch. Please welcome Mr. John Aguilar.
Good afternoon. So prior to this session, we were on Viber, and I did mention to this panel that this is probably a world record for number of panelists in a forum. So I think right now we have 9, but there's one more coming up, so that makes 10. So I think I'm very confident that this is a world record. We are given 40 minutes by which to finish this. So gentlemen, I will start with each of you introducing yourselves, your companies, and what you are here for. So I'm going to give you 1 minute each, and perhaps you could give us strictly 1 minute each, and please give us an idea of the success behind your respective companies, and I guess a topic that you will be talking about later. Mr. Partha?
Hi, this is Partha Sarkar. I am the CEO of Hinduja Global Solutions, probably one of the first Indian companies to invest in Philippines way back in 2003, 2004. It really emerged as an exploratory mission out here to Philippines to see if we can expand our footprint outside India, because we were big in India. From there on, the journey has been a fabulous journey. We are now 10,000 people, and it's been a wonderful experience for us, as my country manager Pushkar Mishra here, who's grown this business, would confirm. We primarily do a lot of voice-based work from Philippines, but now we've also started to do speech analytics. We've started to do digital marketing. We started to do cloud services as well. So is that 1 minute? Yeah?
I think you made it just in time.
All right.
Right. Very good. Very, very disciplined panel we have here. So, Mr. Mandar Vaidya.
Thank you. I lead Southeast Asia and Middle East for Oyo Rooms. Oyo is a young company. We are 6 years old. Started by Ritesh Agarwal when he was 19. So I work for someone who is now 25. In 6 years' time, we have gone from our first endeavor, which was a hotel with about 30 rooms, to now being the second largest hotel player in the world. We have 1.3 million hotel rooms in 800 cities around the world. Roughly about 1 million of those are just in India and China. And in China, we are 2.5 times bigger than in India. So around 300,000 rooms in India, roughly 700,000 rooms in China. And I guess in terms of this panel, the real reason behind our ability to scale has been actually digital technology and innovation. So I'd be delighted to represent our work, especially when it comes to these two topics. Thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Austin Anthony Joseph.
Thank you. Good afternoon, guys. Austin Anthony Joseph. I am the country delivery lead for Tech Mahindra. Tech Mahindra, as you know, is part of the Mahindra Group, but this is the digital technology piece that we kind of have innovated in this geo. We are about 6,000 people across Cebu and Manila, And the topic that I would like to talk about is digital technology. That comes in from our CEO, C.P. Gurmani, and he says, technology to transform connected nations. So I would like to talk about that. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Saji Vargas.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am an associate professor at Christ University, Bangalore, India. But I also take care of the incubation cell at our university. And my area is grassroots innovations. And I'm the inventor of these biodegradable straws from coconut leaves. So this is my startup. And as of now, we are engaged in setting up small units in rural areas where we engage women to roll out these straws. And these straws are in good demand in US, Europe, and the other countries, including it. So we are also exploring opportunities because Philippines is another country where there are a lot of coconut plantations. So we hope we can lead to a lot of income generation in the rural communities here as well. That's about me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Aseem Roy.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Aseem Roy. I manage the country operations for Wipro in Philippines. A little bit on Wipro. We are a global IT services company with interest in over 60 countries and over 110 cities globally. Roughly a revenue of around $8.5 billion. What is amazing about our company is that 70% of that revenue or 70% of our economic interest is irrevocably committed to philanthropic efforts. So that's one of the big differentiator for us. Here in Philippines, we are among the largest India headquartered companies spread between Cebu and Manila. Roughly 8,000 employees and focus both on digital technologies and business process management. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Yeah, you can go ahead. Shiju Varghese. Okay. I don't want to make a mistake. Shiju Varghese. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, His Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, and good afternoon to all of you, all the panelists here as well. I represent about 4,500 plus Filipinos here who work with TCS, Tata Consultancy Services. We are about $22 billion organization with $120 billion in market capitalization. Essentially our focus is here to definitely support the BPO industry. At the same time, we've got about 25 to 30% of our work that we do. 99% of that are Filipino workforce, who focuses primarily on the IT, digital, and the future of IT industry, which is leading towards. So we are training people. We are also engaged in academic programs where we recruit people from the universities, train them to be ready for the future industry growth, not necessarily being adopted by TCS, but being available for the industry at large, which they can really go and work for. It's more about enabling them to be ready for the IT industry where it is leading towards. That's pretty much what we do here. And it's been a good journey to what Mr. Ambassador mentioned about the kindness of the people. So our aim is to bring that kindness of Filipinos and marry that with the technology that Indian companies bring in to create magic for the next generation, which is the digital age. Thank you. Mr. Brian Koo.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Koo from Grab Philippines. We at Grab is now known as your everyday, everything super app, where we provide services all the way from transportation to food delivery to parcel delivery, all the way to payments. And in fact, we've had very strong ties with India by way of a tech center that we have in Bangalore that takes care of a significant portion of the tech of Grab. And we've also made an investment in Oyo, I think earlier this year. So we're one of Oyo's investors. So go Oyo. We're here to see how we can strengthen our ties with the Indian business community even further and learn more from how Indian companies are able to scale in the way that they do and expand as quickly as they do.
Mr. Anthony Thomas.
Hi, I'm Anthony Thomas, probably the only Indian representing a Filipino company today, from GCash, which is a mobile wallet. The closest equivalent for the Indian audience would be Paytm. In fact, we have common ownership, and what we do is we democratize access to financial services and payments in the country. We have close to 20 million subscribers, and we enable everything in your daily life, from topping up your prepaid mobile phone, which is where it starts, to paying bills and transferring money, enabling merchants with QR code access, online payments with the likes of Lazada, but also access to financial services, whether it's credit or savings or investments and the like. In fact, 18 months ago, we actually visited Paytm and spent a week in India understanding how they rolled this out extensively in the country, and we picked up a lot and tried to do the same here. Thank you.
Mr. Mark Vernon.
Hi, I have a small startup. It's in competition with Gcash called Chaicash, but that's,
and I like, Mark, how you looked at Brian when he said they have the super app.
Yeah, well, okay. I'm not getting into that. But that's one of more than a dozen companies that I own or have invested in. I'm a tech entrepreneur and angel investor. Also on the final pitch, season 3 and 4. My first tech startup was 1988. So most of the startups I invest in, they weren't even born then. So that's fun. And I have a company in India I've had for 20 years with 20 developers in Kochi. So I go over there and I teach them how to swim and they teach me how to play cricket. So in English, I'm supposed to know how to play cricket. So a couple of years ago, I founded the FinTech Association, FinTech Philippines Association, and that's to help tech up the Philippines and integrate FinTech into all aspects of tech, and with the hope that we can, do more like in China, where everyone goes cashless, reducing corruption and so on. So, yeah, that's me.
Okay. And finally, the CEO of Lazada Philippines, Mr. Ray Alimuram.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. So my name is Ray. I'm the CEO of Lazada Philippines. And as some of you may be aware, Lazada is present in 6 markets in Southeast Asia. You could say we're the Flipkart of Southeast Asia. or you could say we're the Alibaba of Southeast Asia. So we were acquired by Alibaba in 2016. Now it's completely fully managed by Alibaba. What we do is our vision, our mission is to accelerate progress in Southeast Asia through commerce and technology. And the way we do this is we empower sellers and customers. We empower sellers by enabling them to build their business online in our marketplace, offering them a way to sign up quick and fast, to receive payments, to have tools to manage their business, and to be able to reliably and quickly deliver their products. Today, we have 50,000 sellers in the Philippines. We have over 100 million products, and 1,000 sellers today earn 1 million pesos a month on Lazada. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So that completes our plenary for today. Thank you very much. I'm just kidding. We still have 30 minutes, I think, more or less. So I want to start things off with Mr. Partha Sarkar. So you mentioned earlier that you came into the Philippines back in 2003, 2004.
Right.
The internet was nothing like what we have now. Yeah. Actually, I think it kind of is still like that in terms of the speed, right? But that's another topic altogether. But what was it like as an Indian company coming into the Philippines back then, and what were your reasons for that entry?
Let me just say that when we started off, this was purely exploratory because we were hearing from our clients that they would prefer to work with Philippines as well. And what has happened to India is that we've had a lot of Indian companies expanding their footprints in Philippines just because of the quality of the manpower that is available out here. And it was fabulous. The experience has been fabulous. And as I said, even though in my peer group there are much bigger billion-dollar companies, we've got 10,000 people, which is larger than the footprint that these billion-dollar companies have. So that's all credit to Pushkar Mishra out here, how he scaled up. But the experience here now with technology is a little different because what we've started off was answering calls. And that was really providing a service. What we are now doing is providing insights as well. In a way, it's counterintuitive. When a call comes in, there is technology now available, which is innovation and all of that, which actually can do speech analytics and tell you why is the call happening. So from a provider of people who can answer calls, we are almost cutting the branch on which we are sitting, which is we are saying that, okay, why is the person calling? And if there is a reason why the person is calling, means that something is not worked out. And how do you make sure you use analytics to stop the call coming in the first place? So using analytics to provide insights into our client's business to make the business frictionless and thereby transform the customer experience. That's what we are working right now. And the team out here does a fabulous job. We are also doing something on digital marketing, which is, as you know, the creativity of the Filipino is legendary. So what we are trying to work out is a model, what I call the agency of agencies, that we work for digital marketing agencies in the US and Canada, while the creative is done out there and the customer relationship and the sales and marketing happens out there. The legwork happens across India and Philippines, and it's a more economic way of doing it. So that's what the team out here is doing.
As an Indian company here, I guess co-opetition is something that probably is an issue, or is it? Obviously, there are two markets, but how does that come into play in terms of your business? Obviously, in the U.S., it's a big issue with the jobs in the U.S. Wanting, at least for the president, wanting them to stay in the U.S. In terms of India, in terms of the this sector, how do you treat that, the relationship with the Philippines?
Yeah, see, it's a win-win. Okay, for us, we believe that India and Philippines is the global back office of the world. But we're also acutely aware of the fact that if our only value proposition is that we take jobs out from developing countries, then there will be stiff resistance that will come in eventually. So what we've also done, which is contrary to what others have done, is that very early in almost way back in 2006, we've invested in US. And today you'll be surprised that, again, our headcount across US and Canada is 7,000 to 8,000 people. So we've created employment in those geographies. So it's a seamless thing, actually. You will not know where the transaction originates and where it ends, because that's what technology does, that's what innovation does. So it's co-opetition, that's the right word that you used. I think there is an enormous value story of India and Philippines working together to be the global back office, but not to the exclusion of what's happening onshore, and definitely not a value proposition which says we'll take all jobs out from onshore, because that will create a lot of problems. And we saw that coming in a long time back, and we worked against that. We've invested in those geographies.
Thank you very much, Partha. So, Mandar, aside from working for a 25-year-old billionaire, you were able to scale so much faster, bigger in China than in India for obvious reasons. What was the main reason for a 19-year-old to be able to scale his company to where it is now? What was it within the ecosystem that allowed your founder to be able to do this?
I think the whole story behind how Oyo was founded actually is a story of innovation and a story in simplicity. And I think one of the core reasons why we have been able to scale is that at its heart, our business is exceedingly simple. Ritesh, after his high school, decided to take 3 months to travel around the country and meet some of his friends and explore what college he should go to and so on. And in those 3 months, he had one very simple insight. All the hotels he stayed in had less than 100 rooms. And he had never heard of a hotel chain which had hotels which were less than 100 rooms. And then he went on Google and tried to find such chains globally, and he didn't find a single one. And he said, you know what, I'm going to go to these hotels and see if I can run them better than they can. And soon he discovered that the standard of infrastructure and services provided in these very small hotels, some of them with 10 rooms, 20 rooms, 30 rooms, 40 rooms, was quite poor. They did not really know what their customers wanted. And he said, let me try running one and see if I can do better. And he, to this day, tells the story of how his ambition, a long-term ambition, was to run 6 hotels in New Delhi. Today we run, as I said, 1.3 million rooms worldwide. I think what came out of this whole thing was a very simple business model, which is we go to a hotel. For the most part, 80% of our business is a franchisee-driven business model. We go to a hotel, we inspect it. If we feel that this hotel requires upgradation in infrastructure, we tell them what upgradation they require. We invest in that hotel, so we co-invest and upgrade the hotel. Then we put in a pricing algorithm, so we know how to price better. We know how to represent the hotel better on online media, including online travel agents like Booking and so on. We also have our own platform. And therefore, we are able to deliver better service to our end customer, which is the joint customer of both the hotel partner and us. In return, we take a certain commission. So it's a very simple business. What we've managed to do through technology, which is the second secret of this scaling up, is actually tech enable every aspect of this. So when our first infrastructure team goes into the hotel, they have an app which literally guides them step by step what to do. So the app says, go to the reception. You go there and click on it. It tells you the 5 things to check for. And you keep clicking and it keeps building up a score. It says now go to the first room, go to the elevator, go to the fire escape. And everywhere you go, take photos. We have artificial intelligence which runs on the photos in addition to the checklist. At the end of 40 minutes, it spits out not just what are the 5 things that need to happen, an approximate capex cost and approximate length of time. So we are able to on the spot discuss that with the owner. Our pricing algorithm is entirely artificial intelligence based. So we have no human interface when it comes to pricing our hotels. So we price our hotels much in the same way that, let's say, a Grab would price its cab rides, or a telecom company would or an airline would do it. So that's where technology comes in again. And of course, over time, we have learned what consumers value. And therefore, when we began 6 years ago in India, we began with a very simple 6-point promise, which is we said, we promise at rock bottom prices, which you get in budget hotels anyway, we promise 6 things. We promise you will get a washroom, running water, an air conditioner, clean linen, Wi-Fi, and breakfast. That's it.
I thought you said wife. Wi-Fi.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Wi-Fi
Fair
and
enough.
breakfast.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And these were services which we worked on to ensure that we were able to deliver. And so I would say simplicity and technology are the 2 things which helped with a scale. In terms of the environment, the only thing I would add is that though he himself started this at 19 and therefore obviously wasn't an engineer or even a graduate at the time, some of the earliest people that he pulled in to work with him, who are our leaders today and who have stayed with him ever since, do come from sort of the Indian engineering ecosystem, engineering and B-school ecosystem. And so to an extent, I would certainly say that what does help the startup ecosystem in India is these higher education institutes which create that kind of an environment.
Yeah, so your founder's, success was largely due in part, I guess, to his vision, I guess his, the story, the backstory behind the company. But you were touched on the enablers, so if we can get now to that, Austin, what do you think are the specific enablers in India that have allowed people like...
because I think what Mandar mentioned about connecting technology, that's the key enabler. I mean, if you look at how we can really transform the business and make it more customer experience, listening from the customer what they really want. I mean, giving them the 5 things that Mandar spoke about is what is customers asking for. Let the technology work for it. And that is where we come in the picture. Once you're actually setting up that framework, there are some characteristics that you really need to talk about. And what India really collaborates and wants to really bring in with Philippines is, how we can really get that predictiveness in the business values chain. It's very important to understand competitiveness. Second is developing intelligent products, digitally intelligent products rather. I think that is more important. Third thing I highly recommend is the millennial culture. Let's not forget them. I mean, the ones who are traveling, the ones who are really using your product, you have to take care of their wants, do's and don'ts. I mean, so how is technology enabling that? Collective intelligence, I think what Partha spoke about is definitely very important. And last but not the least is your customer centricity. So technology plays a key role in really translating the voice of customer, and that is what we kind of want to do from the digital, making applications more convenient and make your life a little more satisfied. I think that's about it.
Thank you, Austin. So, Saji. Okay, so Saji has a very interesting product here. So Saji, I'd like to pass this around, if you may. It's these are straws made from coconut palm leaves. So if you can pass that around so that everyone can see. Very interesting invention, and apparently it's not your only invention. You actually have a slew of different products, inventions that you've put out through the years. And what I'd like to ask is, as a social enterprise in India, there's always the question, is it a sustainable business? So for something like that, obviously it will make money. Will it move the needle in terms of sustainability long term in the world? Maybe there's a question mark there, but in your experience, what has been the biggest impact that something like that, a product like that, has made?
Yeah, I would like to emphasize on the underlying philosophy behind such things. With all the global challenges that we have, particularly in relation to climate change, I think countries like India and Philippines have great solutions to offer, so which obviously is going to be sustainable. Now, just for instance, this is made from dried coconut leaves, fallen leaves. So we had a team surveying 15 villages of Karnataka. We identified 5 lakh coconut trees, and we asked the farmers what do they do with the fallen leaves. And except for one place where it was just being powdered and mulched, it was simply burned. But we had a great solution here because this is a chemical-free process. We just have a steaming process which brings out its own wax. So it was a great solution in place. And just one coconut leaf, the compound leaf, gives you 200 straws, and which we are selling at a very, fantastic pricing. It's a very exciting proposition in the sense that we need upgradation of technology. Now, just before coming here, we opened our 3rd unit in one of the villages of Kerala, that is in Palakkad, where I opened this in a clinic where children who are mentally challenged are brought there for the daily therapy sessions. So the mothers come from 10 kilometers, 12 kilometers, and they are there stuck because they have to take back their kids after the therapy session is over. At the same time, they have huge financial constraints, and the medical bills of these children itself goes to 10 to 12,000 rupees. So this clinic, they called us up and said, can you start this unit for our mothers? The mothers are working there. And we just inaugurated that, and the mothers, we give them small machines. Now, we actually tried a very delicate balance of, we bring in automation and technology, and at the same time, we bring more people to work. Because an innovation like this, a product like this, it is in huge demand. Already in 3 months, we got orders for 100 million straws per month from across the globe. So we need I work in this university, so I have engineering students who are there. So we are very excited about upgrading the technology, automating it, so that these women don't suffer, not able to meet the supply. We don't have to suffer a supply constraint. So I think I'm very, so we have some dishwashing scrubbers. I focus on things which are just discarded. Like I make dishwashing scrubbers, eco-friendly dishwashing scrubbers from the mesh of the coconut leaves. So there are a lot of these products which are now already in huge demand across the globe. So I feel this is very much sustainable, and as the rate of production is not that high at this point of time, our pricing is still higher and we still get huge demand. So I think it's very, very sustainable. So we look forward to have such opportunities in Philippines as well.
Great, Saji. Great work you're doing. Earlier, I mentioned to you, I saw a documentary on Netflix called Period, which was about an Indian entrepreneur. He was Mr. Pad, right?
Yeah, Padman. He's called the Padman.
The Padman, and you are the straw man, right?
Yeah.
And I think we'll be having that for dinner tonight, right?
We just finished. We employed 82 women already. So our target is to employ 1,000 women by the end of this year. 82 women are already employed. Thank you very much.
We need more people like you. Thank you very much, Saji. So Asim. We talked earlier about your entry into the Philippines. Very interesting, your story. You actually came in to Cebu first before you entered Manila. What was the reason behind that?
Oh, that's interesting because way back in 2000s, 2008, for most of the world, Manila was Philippines and Philippines was Manila.
Correct.
And even in 2008, we thought Manila was too congested. The attrition level was high, the roads were choking, and with all due respect to all Manila guys are here. And we took a decision that Cebu, or a provincial city, offered the right ecosystem for us to go live with a new process or a new business. It had international flight connectivity, great talent pool. Provincial government was too keen to facilitate everything that's there, from PESA clearance to any permits that were there. And I think that is a strategy that kind of worked for us, because if I look back today, we set up operations in Cebu in 2008. Most of our customers who saw challenges either in Manila because of whatever reason, it can be traffic, it can be downtime because of BCP situations, typhoons. Typically, we realize that there was a loss of man days. It can be 3 days, 4 days in a year, which is substantial for any business. Cebu that way offered a very, very stable geographical location. And customers who had operations even in Manila, they opted to move for Cebu as an in-country BCP setup. So I think that saga, that story continued, because while the rest of the IT and BPO industry was heavily focused on Manila NCR, we kind of spotted gold in Cebu. We continued to grow, ramp up, from one account to other. So we today effectively support more than 20 global customers out of Cebu. That makes us the second or third biggest employer in Cebu, creating a lot of wealth, creating a lot of job and employment in Cebu. And I think that kind of helped us because we were able to groom the leadership. We didn't have too much of competition out there. That works very well with the customer. So when it comes to pure BPO kind of work or business process management kind of work, niche, healthcare, airlines accounts, and retail, it was a fantastic decision for us to go in Cebu. Manila, we balance it out more as a strategic location, doing more of IT services work. So we support in terms of more than 20 customers even out of Manila. But Manila was one of our second BCP location, plus doing more of IT services. So between Cebu and Manila, it just worked out to be the best combination for us. So I think it has been a very successful delivery model for us. Plus, we have now like 99%, 98% localized. So just what Shaji mentioned, that highly localized workforce. So in the last 10 years, we have been able to achieve that landmark.
Thank you, Aseem. I was just given a signal for 10 minutes left. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 minutes each. I'm so sorry, but we're going to have to go with, okay, so Shiju. So you mentioned earlier when we were speaking, India has these the 12 champions you mentioned. And one of this 12 champions is really tech. And how, I guess, the government has really supported tech companies. Can we talk about that and how that has played into the success of innovation and technology in India?
Yeah, sure. So what the 12 champions that I was mentioning is about India putting a focus on 12 different areas where they have earmarked about $750 million US dollars to focus and to nurture. One of that being the digital. Now the government surely works as an enabler wherever we need to grow a business unit or an industry vertical, and that's how this functions. So if we have to map that and how that has been successful, there is something that TCS has done called M-Krishi. This is for farmers, where the farmers who are actually farming in the rural areas, they don't have the leverage and they cannot be enabled by themselves when they have to go out for the digital technology benefits that they can get for all the larger market they want to service and share. Now the global marketplace is no more bounded by the geographies that they have to reach out to. This pretty much digital world has brought everything together on as simple as an iPhone or a mobile phone, where you can reach out to aggregators, because there are many aggregators who bring the suppliers and where the demand is coming from to the single platform where you can actually trade. So it's no more limited by the boundaries. Now, how I can give you a classic example that can possibly work is, to Saji's point about the straws being made by coconut trees, leaves, Philippines is where you have all the coconut trees and leaves that you can find.
Right.
Now, how can you get those places where this is in abundance and get them to know about the technology that goes behind Saji's invention, and get them and enable them to really sell that and go out in the marketplace? Now, TCS, like how the M-Krishi program that works, M-Krishi is where it gives on a basis on a predictive analysis. It gives you the market, the forecast of the weather. It gives you the soil conditions. It gives you the crop conditions, the pest controls, pest conditions for the farmers. So they can really now see technically they are enabled where and how they have to act, what they need to do with their crop, when they have to reap, and so on and so forth. Now this becomes absolutely available based on data which is available with an organization like TCS. They bring it, put it on a mobile app, and it's available for the people. The same concept, you can take it here where the farmers or where you have the coconut trees being planted and plantations being in abundance, give them the access to the technology that Saji's invention brings in. Saji gets a big marketplace, supplier base, where he can source them, and then using the same digital platform, you have a huge market, which is a globe, where you can sell this. Now imagine the power of making that reality. And whether it is possible, it's possible. Are these based on facts? Yes. Why? Because one, if you have to base on the Indian context, we're looking at India and Philippines as where we can bring this together, just expounding on that, India today is the market share of India in the digital space, IT outsourcing space is about 55%. Indian IT industry is about 182 billion as we speak. That talks about the credentials. Now take that and enable it. The government's role is to really enable, which can actually make this a reality. So I think there's a huge potential, and it's not just to be stayed on this panel discussion, but we can take it beyond. And we need supporters, we need enablers. We are here to do that for you. So count TCS to make that happen from a technology perspective. Count Saji to make it happen from a technology to make that business a viability perspective. All we need is the large coconut trees that is available in Philippines as the supplier base.
We can cut down some for you and ship it.
Perfect.
So that won't be a problem.
It's a possibility.
Thank you very much, Shiju.
Thank you.
So, Brian, you mentioned earlier that you have back-end operations in Bangalore. Let's talk about the talent. Why is it an ideal, I guess, location for you to have? What is it about Indian talent that is such a big come on? You could have, I think you mentioned earlier, you went in some other countries, but India in particular.
Yeah, so Grab has tech centers across the globe. We have a couple here in Southeast Asia, one in China, one in the US. But a significant part of our Grab financial technology engineering comes from Bangalore. We started that, I think, a few years ago, and that's grown to a few hundred engineers in India now. And one of the reasons that we chose Bangalore as a location was in when it comes to tech talent, and not just pure raw talent, because I do believe that Philippines, when it comes to raw talent, exists here. But what the Philippines doesn't have yet is experience. India has far more unicorns than we have here in Southeast Asia.
Right.
And just because of the whole cycles of these unicorns, that they've seen things, they've gone through scaling products from a few hundred users to millions of users. They've seen different levels of technology that our engineers here in the Philippines and here in Southeast Asia have not seen yet. So maybe in 10 years, engineers in Southeast Asia would have the same level of experience as the ones in India now. But today, we're learning a lot, and we're benefiting a lot from all the experience that has been accessed through this tech center that we have there.
Yeah, I guess market base counts for a lot. Philippines over 100 million. India is
times 10.
Times 10. So that does count for a lot. Speaking of which, in terms of the market, let's talk about the market, Anthony. So how has the penetration of Gcash, I mean, I see it everywhere right now. How is that, I guess, added to the acceptance in general, not just of Gcash, but the other players as well? We talked about co-opetition earlier. How does that come into play? One of your co-opetitors is right beside you. Actually, both. So how do you treat each other? It's like friendly competition.
No, I think the problem in the Philippines is quite acute because only 1 out of 3 Filipinos has access to a bank account. That's where India was probably 7 years ago, before Aadhaar and before eKYC and the tech stack and all of that took over. So given that it's 1 out of 3 who have access to a bank account, and maybe 1 out of 10 who has access to formal credit, and even in terms of physical access, about a third of the barangays or the districts do not have a physical bank branch. So that's where I think there's a large enough problem to solve that, of course, we're trying to lead the charge here, but Grab and everybody else, including the folks on the panel, are trying to solve the same problem. And I think there's enough room for all of us, right? Because ultimately what we're trying to do is make it easy to access and, again, embed in daily lives, encourage entrepreneurship, whether it is in terms of accepting of payments or actually having access to credit or savings. Now, in India, one thing was that the government actually took a very active role in democratizing access. I think in the Philippines, entities like Go Negosyo have been quite instrumental in pulling together at least all of us digital platforms in trying to solve this larger problem and pave the way for us. So that's where at least Presidential Advisor Joey Concepcion has been quite instrumental in picking up lessons because he has close ties with India and trying to get us all to solve this problem collectively.
Okay, so we go now to Mark Vernon. You're one of our investor judges on our TV show, The Final Pitch. It's like the Shark Tank of the Philippines. And you're a pretty interesting guy, not only because you're a TV personality, but also you're the only white guy here, right? So in terms of your relevance to this topic, I'd like to ask, and this is something I've asked you before on the show, what was your reason behind you now being here for the past 6-7 years? You were in India for 20 years before.
No, this is my third retirement. I can't retire. So I sailed around the world for 6 years, ended up in Thailand, staying there a bit longer because I was a bit fed up with sailing. And I was traveling around Asia at the time, but my true love is IT, and I wanted to do more, and in Thailand it was very difficult for foreigners to do that. Came here, discovered I didn't really know much about the Philippines before I came here. Came here, found everyone speaks English. Property, I started investing in property, started thinking, okay, I can do some back office operations here for my company in the US. I'm in IT training for the last 30 years. And then started looking at other investments as well, a small business. So over the last 8 years, it's changed a little bit. My job is to try and encourage people to start up businesses and to fund them or to give them some reason to not go abroad and make money and send it back home. I did employ like 10 programmers at one point, took them from college, had to retrain them because the training here is not as good as it, like in India, there's 350,000 graduates every year, here 35,000. But here the training is not preparing people for work, so I have to retrain them. So that was a learning process over the last 8 years. The reason I'm a competitor to Gcash is because at the time there was no open integrations, so I couldn't really plug in. So the reason why a lot of companies are not very open here, they're like mine and not going to collaborate, and that creates competition. I had no choice. But now my aims are still the same, is to try and tech up the Philippines, try to introduce cashless. So we created the FinTech Association to try and do that, and part of me being on the show is to actually promote all these ideals. So you can say competition, but really I want to support Gcash. I use it every day.
That's not what you told me the other day.
No, I use it every day because they're much bigger. So I have to find my niche. My niche on that particular company is really what I love doing, which is the tech integration into companies to integrate fintech and find ways to coexist with Gcash. But I'd rather work with everyone, and that's why we co-founded the FinTech Association to do that. So, and the reason why I'm here, because it's more fun in the Philippines.
There you go.
I've lived everywhere in the world, and I like it here. So there's a lot of problems here, and I like creating solutions for those problems.
You're welcome. We do have a lot of problems here. But okay, we are down to our last panelist. And okay, so Ray, I'd like to ask you, right now, I wouldn't say it's infancy. We have had a lot of tech companies that have succeeded, Lazada being one of them. What have been the biggest challenges for you in this ecosystem, in this market?
I have 30 seconds, right?
I'll give you 2 minutes.
So I would say, as everyone has mentioned here, Lazada, the Philippine market is a very challenging market. And actually, when we started Lazada in 2012, what we realized is that when we were trying to build a company, we had to build like 3 other industries as well. among them payments, logistics, and of course, an entire industry of supply. We also were trying to fix internet, but we didn't want to get into cell sites. Right? And so if you think about it, Lazada sought out early to solve the biggest problems in e-commerce in the Philippines. So there wasn't a lot of, as Anthony mentioned, there wasn't a lot of prepayment. People didn't have cards. Less than 5% have a credit card. So what we did was we enabled cash on delivery. We're now bearing the results of that Pandora's box that we opened, because today 80% of our orders are still cash on delivery, and we're trying to move them out. There was a very underdeveloped logistics industry, so we said, well, let's go build our own delivery fleet. So Lazada Express, we built Lazada Express. And there was very limited supply, so we quickly shifted from a retail consignment model to a marketplace model. I used to work at Amazon for 4 years in the retail business, and I thought that was the way to do e-commerce. Realized that to build massive supply, you need to build a marketplace model, because a lot of inventory and supply in the Philippines is not concentrated in a few distributors. But in addition to that, we also opened up cross-border. Today, we have 100 million products on the platform, and I would say 95% of those are actually sitting in a warehouse that is not in the Philippines. They're mostly in China, actually, but we're also looking at other markets today. So you'll see that what we solved was payments, logistics, and supply. There was another issue, which was internet. And the way we addressed that was to go mobile, because what we quickly realized was that people were getting online for the first time on their mobile phone. In fact, if you talk to an average Filipino on the street, give him a laptop and say, can you please find Lazada, they probably wouldn't be able to find it, although they know where the app is on their phone. They also know where the Facebook app is on their phone. The concept of using a browser on a laptop is alien to most Filipinos. The internet equals the phone equals the app, right? And so by working on those four things, that's kind of how we built, we address those challenges. And after we built the infrastructure, I would call that the infrastructure, we actually shifted into now enabling what I call empowering sellers. Today, a year and a half ago, we had 5,000 sellers on our platform. Today, we have more than 50,000. Okay, and the way we've done that is, I like when Mandar was talking about Oyo saying he has a simple business. I'd say we also have a simple business. You just make it easy for people to sign up, give them some tools to quickly list their products, bundle their products, run a promo, join a campaign, and then use some smart algorithm, which we call personalization, to send traffic to them. That's where we are today. So it doesn't look that simple when we started, but when you look at it today, it seems pretty straightforward. Let sellers come on, put their products, and then let customers buy what they need to buy.
Of course, to make it that simple, it really is a lot of hard work, right? The simplicity takes a lot. It takes a lot of resources, it takes a lot of effort. And I guess tonight, or rather today, with the 10 for this record-breaking panel, we have accomplished what we set out to do. So congratulations to the 10 of you for being here and for sharing your thoughts on Philippine-Indian business relations. Thank you very much. And that has been the first
Thank you so much, John. And can we please invite our panelists here to the center of the stage for a photo opportunity. And again, thank you so much for joining us, our Digital Technologies, Innovation, and Startups Forum. I'm sure many of you over here would like to make some connections with some of our panelists here on stage. They'll be around for the gala dinner, and at the same time, you can speak to them separately offline outside during our coffee break. We invite you to please do make those connections. We would love for you to build stronger relationships between India and Philippines business relations. And moving on quickly to our second session here this afternoon, a great topic which our President Duterte has given a lot of focus on is the idea of agriculture, the modernization and the improvement of agribusiness here in the Philippines. With the failure of agriculture in the Philippines, we will not be able to grow this country. So joining us on stage for the next panel, may I please welcome the Undersecretary for Operations and National Project Director of the Department of Agriculture, Philippine Rural Development Project. Please welcome the Honorable Ariel Kayanan. Undersecretary Kayanan, please join us here on stage. Join the good Undersecretary here on stage. Please welcome the Philippines Country Representative and Director of the ASEAN Satsura AG, Arvind Kumar TJ. We also have the chairman of Parasat Seeds, Mr. Karumanchi Prasad. Joining our esteemed gentlemen here on stage, please welcome the Managing Director of Patabi Agro Foods Private Limited, Mr. B.V. Krishna Rao. We have the co-founder and CEO of Satsura Group or Satsura Group, Mr. Abhishek Raju. The President of the Philippine Chamber of Agriculture and Food Incorporated, Mr. Danilo Fausto. And the only rose among all the thorns here on stage, please welcome our moderator, the Senior Advisor to the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, Philippines Chair, and the Philippines Angat Lahat sa Digital Moderator. Please welcome Ms. Josephine Romero. A round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen, for our Agriculture Forum.
Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, my name is Josephine Long, and in the Philippines, we're very used to short names, so please call me Jopin. All right. I'm lucky enough to have a shorter panel, so I will be giving them a lot more time to talk about themselves and hopefully be able to draw out a couple of questions from the audience. Now we go to a more, a traditional industry that is centuries old and that something that India and the Philippines have been partnered with for decades already. We go to agriculture. Agriculture, every time an Indian president comes to visit the Philippines, and every time a Philippine president goes to India to visit, there would be some kind of collaboration between our countries on agriculture. And just this visit, there were also some agricultural cooperation. For today, what we'd like to do is to get down to business at the company level, at the individual level, maybe even get some insights from the people in front of you as to how we can collaborate on agricultural concerns that affect the globe and our countries today. All right, so we have I'll change the format a little bit. I'd like this to be a more conversational discussion, and we will include the audience in the conversation. We have with us, we're lucky to have with us a Vice Minister or Undersecretary of the Department of Agriculture, who will give us an overview of what DA, Department of Agriculture, looks like today, especially with the new Secretary on board. And then to bookend the panel, we have the Chamber Head, Philippine Chamber of Agri-Foods in the Philippines, Danny, to talk about, I guess, whatever our Indian friends, to react to whatever our Indian friends will be sharing with us. So, without further ado, I will ask the Vice Minister, Undersecretary Ariel Kayanan, to give us that overview, and then we can start talking about it.
Okay, I'll take off from the statement that we have a new leader, of course. This year marks the midterm of the leadership. I'm referring to the administration. And during this year, at the midterm of this year, a new there was a change in leadership. From a local chief executive farm boy, here we are a returning secretary, a servant leader. So immediately upon his assumption of duty, there were some immediate, should I say, instructions that came from him, and part of it will be recasting and rebooting. And what are the things that we recast and reboot? Number one, the challenges that agriculture has been facing right now. Maybe you may be saying that they are what we call recycled or broken record, but these are the what we call challenges that we have. Number one is the unaffordable and accessible credit, which was mentioned also from the previous panelists. The other one will be the aging farmers and fisher folks. the climate change that we've been all facing, not only the Philippines, the undeveloped agri-mechanic manufacturing and export, the severe deforestation and land degradation, which is also connected to agriculture because from where water flows, that is from where food grows also. The lack of technically skilled labor, the limited farmland diversification, and the limited use of technology. But there are some things that we are very productive with. And I'm sure everybody will agree that with the 1.9% growth rate population that we have, if there's something that we are actually successful, resilient, and sustain, is the population growth. So with that population growth, in fact, it was not even affected by climate change. I think it was even further improved by climate change. So that agriculture had become more challenging because feeding the millions, feeding the 105 millions that we have without increasing the farmland that we used to farm with had been a challenge. So the secretary immediately says there are some paradigms that we need to consider with. And what are these basic paradigms? It is so worthwhile to mention that there are 8 that I actually impressed. He also gave us 8 paradigms. And this paradigm will be actually rolling up and centered on ANI and KITA. It's a local term. ANI means the actual production and KITA means the income. Okay, the first one will be modernization. The second is industrialization, export promotion, consolidation of farm, because we know for a fact that you cannot have the economic of scale if you have broken farms, roadmap development, infrastructure development, budget and investment. I mean, more than ever, we know that the budget of agriculture as compared to the other department, it just got a small share of the pie. But of course, that is fiscal policy. And of course, more than ever will be how we operationalize the legislative support. So with those premise, of course, we're looking forward also with the collaboration and more engagement and more coordination with the private sector. Because we strongly believe that while agriculture should be led, initiated by the government, it should always be championed by the private sector or the stakeholder. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I impress to the body the challenges that the Philippine agriculture is facing and the way and how do we want to approach it, now we are ready to face the questions also.
Great. It's all right. Thank you. Thank you, Undersecretary Ariel Kayanan. Right. So with that message of the Undersecretary saying that there would be strong private sector partnership that we are looking for as a government and as a country, I would like to invite our panelists from India to please introduce yourself, what you do, and all of you are doing business in the Philippines already. Maybe discuss that a little bit and what you think we can do further to deepen our relationship. I will call on Mr. Arvind Kumar and of Satsur, and please bear with me because there are 2 from Satsur here. After him, I will call the CEO and founder of the same company. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Josephine. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity. To introduce you briefly, I got 5 minutes. To introduce briefly, Satsur was founded in Bangalore 3 years ago. It's a innovative large analytics data analytics company, which leverages advances in satellites, artificial intelligence, IoT devices, and socio-economic data to build a platform where we have developed solutions for agriculture, infrastructure, climate change, and disaster rescue solutions. In the last 3 years, Satsur, which is now headquartered in St. Gallen, Switzerland, has received numerous recognitions from various reputed organizations, including we received an award from the Bill Gates Foundation as one of the most innovative technology companies. And also, we work very closely with the federal government of India, and our innovations, artificial intelligence, AI innovations is now have been included in the NITI Aayog that is the Planning Commission of India's, the Prime Minister of India's as a artificial intelligence policy. Here, last 3 months, we have become active. We entered the Philippines, I would say, in March. We have seen a very tremendous potential, particularly now with Secretary Dar has taken over as the new secretary. And also recently, as our friend said, the Honorable President Duterte wants the banks to increase its lending to the agriculture sector. And as you may all know that Philippines, every year some 20 typhoon passes through, and agriculture is high risk occupation. So the banks are not lending the money because it's always a chicken and egg problem. And unless there is an insurance, the banks won't be comfortable even to lend the money. So what SATSURE is starting with now is we have started now developing a satellite-based weather index insurance for the corn industry. That's why here we are working together. As our Honorable Undersecretary said, the private sector participation is the key. So to say that today evening in the presence of our His Excellency President Govind, SATSURE, Prasad Seeds and Malayan Insurance will be exchanging a memorandum of understanding to design the first ever satellite-based weather index insurance. So as our Honorable Ambassador Majumdar said, this MOU will trigger a development, will help the banks to increase its lending to the agriculture sector. It will impact positively to millions of Filipino smallholder farmers. And I would say, I would like to thank Mr. Jeffrey Ko, our Swiss-Re friend from Singapore, who has come here specially. And I would like to appreciate his presence here. It shows that this MOU will be the catalyst for the private sector insurance companies to go and help the Filipino farmers. Because when there is an insurance, all banks will go and lend. So that's the large area analytics, a large answer, and the largest solutions that we are bringing. Thank you.
All right. Wow, that's a good jump start. I think that deserves a round of applause. Right. Let's listen to the CEO and founder of SATSURE. Maybe he has a little bit more to say about that.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. I was introduced to the markets in the Philippines through my colleague Arvind. He invited me to visit and see for myself the big opportunities that exist. And there are big opportunities because there are problems that are yet to be solved. There are basic social infrastructure missing, like insurance, access to credit, which we have always had. And in most developing markets and including markets in India, it's all taken for granted. Nobody worries about credit. Nobody worries about insurance. But when it does not exist, it impacts a lot of people. And that is the opportunity that we saw in this country. We had successfully implemented various solutions in India where we had similar problems. India is today a lot more mature. There are lots of solutions. Agri-tech solutions are quite abundant. We've learned from our peers. We've learned a lot of things by trying to solve some of these problems. And here we are trying to do the same all over again in the Philippines.
All right, great. Thank you. We'll discuss that further later. We'll slice and dice it so that we can converse about it as a whole panel. Now, please allow me to let's listen to Mr. Prasad, Mr. Karumanchi Prasad. The Prasad Seeds has been in the Philippines for a while, and it is one of the Indian companies that have actually invested seriously in the Philippines. For several years, they have posted investments, FDIs, foreign direct investment in our country, and it's not only commercial activities that they are advocating in the Philippines. They also have a lot of solutions and best practices that they can share with us. Let's listen to the chairman. Mr. Prasad?
Thank you. So just I give you a little brief introduction about me so that then I can take up on it. Basically, I'm an agriculturist. I'm a farmer from a rural background. Started my career as an agriculturist producing seeds for a national company in India. That's where I started my career. It's way back 40 years now. So that's my background. And now, for the past 40 years, in Indian agriculture, there is a lot of changes I have seen these 40 years of development, particularly in the seed industry. With that experience, now the Indian seed industry, it was lack of infrastructure facilities for seed production, processing, packing. That was the depth of the area in that particular industry. The same thing, I found similar kind of agro conditions here in Philippines, and I found Philippines is a good place for us to start after India. Now in India, what I can say, we provide services to different multinational companies in the country, where multinational companies want to invest much investments in the research and branding. The kind of intermediary work, organizing seed production with the farmers and coordinating the farmers with the companies, it is a big job. That's where I took this as an opportunity of business and I developed it. At this point of time, in particularly two crops, important crops in the globe, corn and rice, we are almost all providing services. More than 50% of the country production used to process and pack in our facilities in India. So after looking into Philippines agriculture, I thought it is the right place to start. And also my customers, these multinational companies, asked me to create infrastructure in Philippines. That's how I started my career again in Philippines in 2014. For the past 6 years, we are doing here. And now we are educating farmers. We are training the farmers in seed production. We to start with a very limited area, some 50 hectares. From now, for the past 4 years, we have reached about 1,000 hectares and handling about 1,500 farmers with whom we are training. This is a little brief about me, and then I think we can take it further.
Thank you very much. Now let's listen to Mr. B.V. Krishna Rao, Managing Director of Patabi Agro Foods. And he also has been doing business in the Philippines. Let's hear from him.
Good evening. My name is Krishna Rao. I come from the state of Andhra Pradesh in India. Basically, we deal in a product which is in scarce commodity in the Philippines, that is rice. We are into processing of rice, upgrading rice and bringing it to world standards. We are India's top exporter of rice, and internationally we stand among the top 5 exporting to different countries. As you might be aware, Philippines is a country which doesn't produce as it requires, because India was also in a same stage. If you take a couple of decades back, India was unable to feed its population. We were importing rice in the 80s after the Green Revolution. As Prasad was saying, there was a lot of investment which went into the agri sector. Therefore, that investment could be at the grassroots level of seed development, farmer education, processing and upgradation. We took part in the supply chain. The entire supply chain, we started investing money. That is where my company plays a major role, and we could see India exporting rice to more than 170 countries, and we are part of that chain in which our company takes a major role in exports. This is what I can explain about my company at the point.
All right, great. Thank you very much. All right, so now let's listen to our other Philippine speaker, Mr. Danilo Fausto, who is the president of the Philippine Chamber of Agriculture and Food. Now, you know what the social ills and the problems of the Philippines are, and you've just heard our friends from India. Anyway, we can discuss that later, but please tell us more about yourself and your chamber.
Thank you. My name is Danny Fausto. I represent the Philippine Chamber of Agriculture and Food. We're about 48 agricultural sectors, but those that active are about 25 to 28 sectors that joins our regular meetings. The different sectors have associations, and the associations have representatives to the chamber, about 2 or 3 people. Some of our members are here in the audience, our colleagues. And we are advocating, we're looking at the programs of the government and perhaps make some recommendations if it warrants. And if there are programs that we do not agree with and we conflict and we are fighting on Undersecretary Kayanan. We have challenges being faced by the agricultural sector, a lot of them in rice, in pork, in sugar, in a lot of them. And we're trying to tackle each one of them, and hopefully the executive branch will hear us. Listening on my own personal business, I'm involved in dairy, buffalo milk, and my inspiration is India. And I've been here in this business for the past 30 years. There's no industry, perhaps, that call it in dairy in the Philippines because we import 99% of our milk to the tune of $1 billion a year of milk. And we are struggling to increase our scale, but we need animals. And we're trying to perhaps find out how we can increase the herd so that we can more milk. But listening to the panelists I heard earlier, we're talking about access to credit. We welcome the insurance initiative of our friends here because that will reduce the risk of banks, because the banks are not going into the agricultural sector considering the risk, and guarantees are not around from the government. Perhaps the insurance, together with digital innovations, we can have reliable data that can make settlements of insurance faster, and banks can look at the opportunities and potentials of agricultural business and be able to lend because of the presence of insurance. Also, on the palay or rice, we also like to welcome more hybrid rice, not only coming from China, perhaps coming from India, so that we can increase the production of our land. We would like to advocate that the agricultural sector should be taken away from being a welfare sector, but to be a business sector. And we're amazed at the movement of India from Green Revolution, away from Green Revolution and White Revolution into an income revolution. And because of the digital innovations that they have implemented, they made their access to market digitized and transparent in terms of the cooperatives not being transparent in their businesses. Now with the digital innovation, they become, that solves that problem. And I hope that can be implemented in the Philippines so that agricultural cooperatives will be able to properly, professionally manage their own affairs.
All right, thank you very much for that, Danny. And that is a perfect segue for us to ask our panelists to now, let's go down to the programs that you think we can work on together as Philippines and India. You heard the Undersecretary lay out what the plans are for the Department of Agriculture, and you know what the problems are, the challenges that we are facing as a country. You have solutions. You, in fact, are our role model, as expressed by our friends here. So I will throw this to any one of you to please expound on maybe things that you already hinted at when you introduced yourself so we can work together.
Thank you. Thank you to President Danny. He's a champion of champions. By the way, I'm a member of the PECOFI. So what he said is the agri-credit problem in the Philippines is the banks are not lending to the farmers. So they have to go to unscrupulous money lenders. They get loan sharks. The solution is the satellite-based solutions, that is the insurance scheme, the weather-based index insurance that we are going to design for Philippines, will help the financial inclusion of the millions of farmers. Our track record, Statu's track record in India, in just 3 years in India, we helped one of the largest Indian private banks to increase its lending to the tune of $400 million US dollars to the agriculture sector, to the smallholder farmers. And that is possible because today India is world's largest and leading innovation happening in the insurance sector, particularly in the index insurance. Particularly the Prime Minister's insurance scheme is one of the most ambitious schemes, and we are working on to bring those kind of know-how and innovative schemes here through this memorandum of understanding today. Because if you see the reason why the banks are not lending, is very high risk, and the way to address this issue is to bring this insurance scheme, because then banks will be able to lend. So we are very hopeful that in next 3 years, we should be able to help not the land bank, but the private banks to increase its lending. It's easy for the land bank, but it's not for the private. But we want to target the private banks to come and help the smallholder Filipino farmers.
Are you targeting the rural banks or any private bank?
Any bank,
Any
because
private bank.
the technology will enable the banks to do direct lending.
All right.
Just for the information, our agricultural bank, the land bank, their exposure portfolio to the agricultural sector is 7.5% of the total
their entire portfolio.
They're supposed to be 100% in agriculture, but 7.5%. And DBP has about 16% exposure to agriculture. It is true that even the banks who are forced to, by law, to lend 25% of their portfolio, wherein 10% for agrarian reform and 15% for the agricultural credit, they'd rather pay the penalty than to lend to the agricultural sector. That brings down the opportunity of agricultural sector to grow and scale up. And diversification to high-value crops is impossible because there's no credit. So now our people, our farmers, are dependent on traders and commission agents who advances money for the production. And in the end, they are forced to sell their products at a cheaper price, not on the market price. And they are more or less on manipulative system or terms. We are amazed by the improvement in India, where it started in 1950, about 75 or 70% of their portfolios in money lenders. It went down in 1960 to 50%. Now they're down to 7% of the money lenders. But it became still in the Philippines because of the absence of the banks. And the insurance that being offered here with digital innovations with it will now perhaps be a good opportunity for banks to take a look at. And we welcome them and hope 1 trillion of this portfolio by law is supposed to be lent out to the farmers that is there sitting and being able to pay for penalties only instead of lending to the agricultural sector.
Okay, I hear you loud and clear, Danny. This is a most welcome initiative. All right.
If I may add.
Can you please expound a little bit on how this is going to work?
Yes.
Even in general terms, broad strokes?
I will. But before that, I would like to note that, yes, we started off this conversation on access to credit and the need for insurance. But we all need to remember that agriculture is a very human story, right? It involves all of us. I mean, we all consume food, and the population is increasing, the land holding is decreasing, our production capabilities are decreasing because not too many people want to do agriculture anymore. We are all trying to increase yields, use less resources to produce more. We are faced with a lot of challenges in agriculture, and India, being the second largest population country, has taken some very, very interesting initiatives to solve these problems. and Philippines can learn from some of these initiatives. The first thing our Honorable Prime Minister did when he came to office was, he set a target to double farmers' income in a very short period of time. Are we there? Not yet. Will we be there soon? Maybe. But having the target itself has created a lot of initiatives around it. So people are working towards, helping farmers get financial inclusion, helping farmers increase their yields, helping farmers get access to markets, so on and so forth. So that is what the Philippines has to learn from India, and I think India serves as a very interesting market to learn from, because we have similar conditions. A lot of farmers, small holding farmers, sometimes growing very traditionally. So that is something that we should learn.
Okay, good.
And we are here to,
to share that information, enable us.
And share the knowledge that we have acquired.
You said something very interesting that I think Mr. Prasad has more to say. When you said that hardly anybody wants to go into farming anymore. Mr. Prasad.
Yeah. It's true to some extent. Now, the rural families, children are getting educated and they like to have a good office jobs, not the farm jobs. That is where it is now. Now, we need to make, I will start with my profession, seed business. How I started, I just had a brief. Now, this is the very important input in agriculture. Seeds is the basic important input in the seed, what the farmers have.
It all starts with the seed.
Seeds, yeah. At this point of time, still Philippines is importing a lot of seeds, though IRI is here for the past many years in rice research, and we could not able to self-sufficient still. Still we are importing, sir. So, now this, how we can overcome this problem? We need to supply the quality seeds to the farmers, high yielding varieties. We need to educate them what best practices can give a better yields. That is one thing, though the department is doing, sir, with respect. Department is doing a lot of efforts, but still there is some private entrepreneurs also required to join hands with the Department of Agriculture to support the farmers, to train the farmers. We need to demonstrate how to can. That is one point. And the seed industry, still, I think it is a wonderful opportunity. Philippines can be self-sufficient within short time. Now still we are importing, it's not required. I think we can produce whatever the total requirement. We don't need to import either from China or India or any other countries. That's what I feel of my 5 years experience working with the farmers and the industry and the department. Now these two things are very important which we need to take it up. And inputs credit, yes. Everybody is talking about the credit facilities to the farmer that need to look into. And also rural entrepreneurs. Now how we can guide the university students and now who are studying agriculture. Now we made a practice last 4 years. We are inviting all the university students who are studying agriculture. They will be trained in our facilities 2 to 3 months time. So they could able to learn, they can understand how they can become entrepreneurs. So this is what we are guiding. There is another sector I think department can look into where how we can make more entrepreneurs in agri-industry. And it should be spread into the rural areas. This industry, this agri-industries need to develop in the rural areas. This I think that's one important thing, how the government can support. India, what it has done, I would like to share a little experience of India. India, they have given lot of support to the small and medium enterprises and by way of providing some incentives so that will be the rural area can develop. That's how they have done. So, and also, India also helping the farmers in supporting for the good quality seeds who are not affordable. They were supported by the government. I think these two things, if the government, of course, already Dr. William Dar, who has taken the charge of Secretary Agriculture, he got a lot of experience in India, he was there for quite a long time, and now he is trying to implement lot many things, I think, with the department No.
All right,
Thank
thank you very much. Before I ask the Undersecretary to respond to your offers and what you have as partnership activities with us, let's hear from Mr. Krishna Rao. Now, he is in rice, and that's something that
Yeah,
everybody has been talking about for the last few months.
Yeah, the other thing what Philippines government can learn from India probably is the support to the industry that government of India gives for farm-based industries, whether it is the procurement of tractors, trailers, subsidies to rice mills, Sortex mills. This all helps in the post-harvest technologies, which help the farmer to get better realization for their produce. Probably in paddy, if you take, because most of the harvesting happens in the rain-fed season, the farmer loses a lot of his production during the rains, during the time of harvest. Probably government of Philippines should invest more money in post-harvest technologies. The other thing what we can bring to your notice is government of India is also working on zero budget farming. According to this study they have done is the farmer today invests a lot of money on chemical and synthetic fertilizers. He can rather outsource from his own. There will be many farmers holding cows, buffaloes. He can use the manure from this cow buffalo. Only thing he has to take care is use a good seed, and then he can develop his farm with less of synthetic fertilizers. Because today when we export rice to many of these European countries, the minimum tolerance for pesticides are also very much very strict. Therefore Philippines can also work on zero budget farming, where they can make study of Indian farms, some of which are as Prime Minister of India and Prime Minister of President of Philippines is also interested in doubling farmers' income in the next 5 years. We hope they adopt this model of zero budget farming, which can be rather than trying to sell your produce at a higher price, reduce your input costs. That is what we can suggest from our side.
All right, great. I think those are all excellent suggestions. Mr. Undersecretary, I think you've laid down what we need, and we have some suggestions on the floor.
Well, that is something that is good when you already heard everything and you have to do is synthesize. Number one, with insurance is something that I do not want to miss. With respect to insurance, I fully agree that there are some laws that were created, and when those laws were created, accompanied with them are sanctions to bring back in order. But instead of those sanctions upon imposing, were actually circumvented. Not only circumvented, but they chose or opted to do pay the penalty. So it only merits that you have to put a sanction so that they will compel, not to avoid it. That's one. Number two, taking off from the 7% contribution of Land Bank. No disrespect to Land Bank. The President already had spoken during the State of the Nation address. Land Bank wishes to do the ease of doing business. Unfortunately, the way on Land Bank structure right now is not a farmer's bank. So the President says, go back and become a farmer's bank. And farmer's bank means you really have to accommodate the farmers in order to access the credit. That's number two. Number three, well, let us compare to human. While when in the implementation of the law, why farmers are the least that those who will be benefiting from it? When we talk about insurance to human, disability has different definition. Disability doesn't mean you are totally paralyzed. Disability does not mean you cannot do anything. When you lost your finger, it is actually a what we call a room for you to claim that you are disabled. When you lose one of your eyes, still the other eye is working. I mean, that index base is very good. Do we have to get the farmers suffer that total damage before they could claim? If there is a drought, definitely the target yield of the farmers would be affected. Why can't they claim? Proportionate to that damage. When there is a flood, farmers' target or what they call yield will be affected. Why can't they be actually claiming on that way. So the last one for the insurance will be, again, I fully agree. An existing law says that 5% of the portfolio of the commercial bank should be intended. When I say intended, it should be provided, or as a provision, access to farmers. So if that is the law, then there's no other way but to make it that the provision to be given to the farmers. Unless otherwise there is a law that will compel those who are actually proponents and all those who will be implementing the law, I don't think we will be having a problem here. Then going back to the food sufficiency and the food security issue. Every government and every administration has a policy. You heard under this administration, the policy is food security. And food security does not mean you have to fully, what they call, produce it. Because in between, there are some economics involved. Number one, it's very costly for the Philippines to be 100% sufficient. While we cannot reach the target, or while we cannot achieve the goal of producing with competitiveness. Competitiveness means producing more, but with low cost, which is the main beneficiary will be the 105 Filipino, the consumers. While we have around 11 million farmers involved in the activity, but there are 105 million Filipinos also who should be taken consideration with. But we are not giving up on that what we call policy of food sufficiency. But the first step will be first, you have to be very competitive on reducing the production cost while increasing the yield. I'll give you the situation there. While there are some who are really competitive, like those in the province of Cabanatuan and the north, who have been producing more than 6 tons per hectare, even 10 tons per hectare. And there are some Gawad Sakawardi who produces 16 tons per hectare. That's already heavens. But there are still who are producing 1.9 to 2 metric tons per hectare. I fully agree that while some have been mechanized already, there are still those who are still using the draft carabao for what they call tilling and land preparation. While there are some who have been using post-harvest facilities that are very efficient, that from the straw, eventually you can actually get them to the sacks. There are some others who are still using the conventional and manual way. So the mechanization is very important. That's why I keep on impressing that we have to learn and also adapt what other countries have been doing. Because on top of it, there are some other forces, uninvited guests, gate crashes, 19 typhoons every year that keeps on getting stronger. And we do not really want them to be here, but by force, they've been going here. And during the time that you're supposed to be doing your harvesting, and that's the time that they will be actually coming in. So the challenge right now, there is no objection, we fully agree, that seeds are very important. Because you do not expect a low variety yielding seeds to give you a productive yield. But seeds are not the only component. I also agree, the total practice. The total practice of what I call the tilling. In fact, under our computation, under our study, not only our study, but the field rice study, a greater part of the cost, the 12 pesos cost per kilo of palay, is actually attributed to labor component. So you will see the policy right now, we're gearing towards more on mechanization. The President already announced that irrigation will be given for free because I already mentioned it is a vital component of crops and in agriculture. Thank you very much.
All right, that's great. So, I mean, you heard it, friends. You and our enablers in Philippine government are in sync. So, moving forward from today, you can expect an even stronger partnership with our government. Now, we have about 3 minutes to this panel. Don't worry, Danny. I'll give you the last word. But can I ask, is there anybody in the audience who'd like to ask one question?
This is for the Undersecretary. I'm Tennyson Chen from Bounty Fresh. Mr. Secretary, we invested in modernization for the last 20 years. By the way, we're in the poultry industry. And our problem is that we cannot compete with the U.S. leg quarter. Every time those leg quarters comes in at 80 cents to the dollar, 80 cents dollar to a kilo, that's only 40 peso, landed cost. So our production cost is much higher than that because we sell a whole bird. The U.S., the breast, they will sell at $6 and they will dump their leg quarters to us. Can the Department of Agriculture solve that problem for us?
Okay, number one, as the top gets going, the going gets tough. Because this is not only an inter or local problem. You know for a fact that when China and US engaged in a trade war, China resorted to other what we call resources, so that US has more surplus right now. But of course, on top of it, we have the non-tariff measures that we could do. Like for instance, if there is already an injury that is happening, that might happen to the industry, we can impose some safeguard duties. So we can only resort with some non-tariff measures. The other one, of course, is the tariff measure.
All right. Okay, with that, I will wrap up this panel by asking the only private sector person from the Philippines to speak. Say your piece, and at the end of it, please give our partners and the undersecretary the wish list of the private sector.
Well, farmers farm not because they want to solve the problem of the country's food security or sufficiency. They farm because of income and profitability. The reason why I'm farming, because I want to make money. I want to be profitable. And in rice, one major is productivity, is the seeds. If you can have more tons of yield per hectare, and there will have to be efficiency. The efficiency involves on the information you get, so that you have the right timing and the right market to digital innovations, which we like to request the Department of Agriculture to put an app so that we'll have this digital information, the right information, so that decisions of farmers can be made. So that's one. But I'd like to caution the good undersecretary and executive branch to think like Hitler. Hitler has to kill all the 6 million Jews to save Germany. You do not kill the 3 million farmers to save the 105 million consumers. Let's not be a Hitler. Let's save the farmers. If you forget and protect, say we're talking about inflation. What inflation? The inflation is 0.9% right now because the farmers do not have the money to buy. They are also consumers. So that's the caution. The executive branch to think twice on slaughtering the farmers to save the 105 consumers. So that's the bottom line of what we're talking here. You in the government, like for example, guarantees. The insurance is here, good. We have 180 billion guaranteed in housing, but you have 5 million guaranteed in agriculture. You have a bank, an agricultural bank, who lent to a shipbuilding Korean company that went bankrupt at 4 billion. If you have lent this money to the agricultural sector, it's a lot of people.
Right, Danny, that's beyond the DA, okay? That's beyond the DA, all right? Let's not go there. Okay, so come on,
anyway,
wrap up.
we need these digital innovations. We need India to help us to get this technology in place, the drone technology, satellite imaging, and so on, to give us the right information so that right decisions can be made. And insurance is a welcome to bring in credit. Thank you.
Okay, all right, last one. Now, you can take your conversation offline, but do you want to respond very quickly to that?
That is one thing that is good out of Jimmy, that love-hate relationship brings the best out of him. I'm just kidding.
You know, it was deliberate that we put 4 people in between them.
Okay, well, I think I sent the wrong signal here. The signal is that we're not sacrificing anybody. I want to put it in the proper perspective, that the source is always mightier than the fountain. And our source, our main stakeholder, are the farmers. Our reason for being are the farmers. So that I keep on impressing we want the farmers to be very competitive. And that is a preparation for that actual roadmap to sufficiency. But for the meantime, there is a balancing equation without taking out of the consideration the farmers. Number two, okay, I fully agree with Jimmy that farming is the activity and the farm is where the actual activity is taking place with. So that there are other considerations that we have to take to. Number one, well, to increase the income, which I fully agree. Kanina po sinabi ko, ani, that is the yield, and kita is the income. It's not always right when you say you increase the production, farmers are earning. So there are other activities other than production, like for instance, manufacturing, processing, packaging, even distribution, because farming right now is not only on the production level, but from farm to fork, hanggang po sa lalamunan. Kanya po, the other value-added activity may add to that income that we are saying. And diversification is not going out of farming, but looking from some other premiums wherein farmers could also earn.
All right. With that, because everybody's signaling us to stop, I think this conversation will go on offline, and we welcome that. I hope you enjoyed the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And again, thank you so much to our guests from India. Hopefully we get the great... Yan, hug it out there on stage. Thank you so much, our friends from the public and private sector here in the Philippines. And we do hope that with this discussion ushers in a lot of technology transfer between the Philippines and India to improve the agricultural sector here in the Philippines. Really one of the key sectors and the priorities of the Duterte administration. Jopin, thank you so much for a great panel. Let's give them another round of applause, please. All our panelists here on stage. And still, ladies and gentlemen, we are enjoying the Philippines-India Business Forum here at the Makati Shangri-La. And we move on quickly to our third panel, still managed by Ms. Jopin Romero, our Senior Advisor to the ASEAN Business Advisory Council Philippines Chair. As we proceed with our Philippines-India Business Conference and 4th ASEAN-India Business Summit, we invite again all of our guests here right now. Please feel free to network and coordinate with the different business persons, executives, entrepreneurs here right now. Let's make some great connections at today's forum. We've had tech, we've had agriculture. Now it's time to go to another industry, something we know India is very well versed at, which is health and pharmaceuticals. With the exponential growth in technology which we enjoyed in the last century, we also experienced an unprecedented innovation in the fields of health and pharmaceuticals. This sudden boost in advancements has increased the overall longevity and value of human life, and we look forward to working with India and learning a bit more on how we can improve the state of health and pharma here in the Philippines. So to help us with this forum, may I please call on stage the Vice President of Corporate Development and the Head of International Relationships of the Apollo Hospitals Group. Please welcome Dr. Harinder Singh Sidhu. We also have the Head of International Business of Aurolab India, Mr. Vishnu Prasad. Joining these gentlemen on stage, please welcome the co-chair of the ASOCHAM and National Council on Healthcare and the Director of Yashoda Super Specialty Hospitals, Mr. Upasana Arora. And on the Philippine side, please welcome the President of Makati Medical Center, Dr. Maria Corazon Consunji. Along with the Director of the Philippine General Hospital, Dr. Gerardo Legaspi. And we welcome back on stage our moderator, the Senior Advisor to the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, Ms. Josephine Romero.
Hello again. Hello, everybody. All right. I hope you enjoyed that panel. I assure you that this panel will be just as exciting because we are talking about another traditional sector. We started off this forum, of this business summit with the digital innovation. A lot of people here on stage didn't have a lot of chance to talk. We have a smaller panel here. They're all in the hospital industry. They're all kindred spirits, and they will talk about how to work together. All right. So I will, since there are only 6 of them, I will ask you to please, for 2 to 3 minutes, tell us something about yourself, your organization, and your value proposition, or what you think you'd like to discuss in the hospital industry and healthcare. All right.
Thank you.
Start.
Thank you. It's a real privilege to be here today, representing India's healthcare sector. I am Dr. Harinder Sidhu. I represent the Apollo Hospitals Group. It is India's largest integrated healthcare group with 72 hospitals, 10,000 beds that we manage, predominantly in India. We have a network of 3,500 retail pharmacy stores. We have 15 institutes for medical sciences, including medical school, Institute of Nursing. We have an Apollo Health and Education Network. And we do a lot of work in the healthcare domain across the spectrum of healthcare delivery. We have been looking at collaborations internationally over the last 15, 20 years. We started to privatize the Indian healthcare in 1983 to bring the best of healthcare in India. There was a time in India when, in the 1980s and 90s, only the rich Indians could afford to go out and get a treatment done, but a lot of Indians were not having access to that. And that's where the first Indian hospital, Apollo, started with bringing quality health care at affordable prices in India. And we are sharing those experiences with the world. And coming specific to Philippines, we have been working with the Philippines fraternity here, especially in the area of pediatric liver transplant, which is one of our area of expertise. And while it is being done here also in Philippines, but the cost is very high. With India as a developing country and limited resources, we have been able to develop low-cost models without compromising on the quality of care and the outcomes. And we are here to see if there are more areas of collaborations we can work on, more disciplines we can take on, and collaborate to see how we can make healthcare accessible to all.
Great. That's Dr. Sidhu from the Apollo Hospitals Group. Now, please remember the key word he mentioned, affordable healthcare, because that's going to be a recurring theme in this panel. And the next speaker is also from a hospital group, but more than a hospital, they also produce consumables. Please go ahead, Mr. Vishnu Prasad.
Hi, my name is Vishnu Prasad. At the outset, I'd like to thank you for having me here. I represent an organization that has dedicated itself to the elimination of needless blindness. It's also an organization that has been an inspiration to many of the corporation foundations in India and globally. The name of the organization is the Aravind Eye Hospitals, and of which Aurolab, which is a manufacturing facility of the Aravind Eye Care System, is also, both of them have been started as a non-profit organization. They are not a commercial venture. What started as an 11-bedded eye hospital in the year 1976, today, on an average, the Aravind Eye Care System sees over 15,000 patients on a day-to-day basis, performs over 500,000 surgeries, visual impaired surgeries per year, sees over 4 to 5 million outpatients per year, conducts over 150 training programs globally each day, and ships our consumable products that we produce at an affordable price to over 160 countries globally. What makes Aravind really unique is also the fact that we are a non-profit organization, and the structure of pricing is such that every paying patient that walks into the hospital today pays actually and covers the treatment cost for 2 free patients and still is sustainable. And that's why Aravind today has also become a case for a business compassion in the Harvard Business School and also in ISB, and is the proud recipient of the Hilton Foundation Award as well as the Bill Gates Award. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Prasad. Now, he mentioned presence in, is it correct, 160 countries? 160 countries, right? I
Yes,
mean,
ma'am. Yes.
your materials are being used
Yes.
distributed in 160 countries. So that's not just affordable healthcare, but it's also accessible. right?
Yes, that's one of the challenges, especially in Africa, where majority of the countries, it's not accessible.
Okay.
So you make it accessible with your cost.
All right, great. So we're building up to our discussion later. Just to remind everybody, and those who were not here earlier, we'd like our panel to be as conversational as possible. We welcome questions from the audience, and we'd like our panelists to show that they're friends and could be partners in the future, if not yet. All right, let's welcome Ms. Upasana Aurora, who is from Yashoda Super Specialty Hospitals.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Upasana Arora. We are running chain of hospitals by the name of Yashoda Super Specialty. My passion is patient safety, because if you go through the data, you will find that people who are sick and coming to the hospital, they are actually sometimes more into trouble because of medication error. So that is why I decided to do something special. So my center is a authorized center for pharmacovigilance of India. So we are monitoring all adverse drug event. Now my center is a center for even device monitoring center, because sometimes when patient is coming to the hospital and we are giving some drug to the patient, sometimes it gives some adverse reaction. So that is how my government is monitoring that which drug is giving more problem to all over India. So then they are changing the formula, or they are just stop that drug. Instead of that, it is my ideology that in healthcare we are supposed to be very sympathetic to the patient. So I think healthcare should not be run as a business model. We are doing business. I am not saying it's a charitable, but same time, it's a value for money. So I wish there are so many procedures which you are doing in Philippines that is good, and we can come and we can share our best practices for that. But same time, if some procedures who are not happening in Philippines, we can have a collaboration with my place, because when I make a price, I always keep in mind that somebody who is coming to my hospital, he may not have a deep pockets. I always keep myself at his place and think about my patient. So this is my little thoughts about human being.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We've been mentioning since the start of this forum that the balance of trade between the Philippines and India is really skewed towards India. I mean, as a self-sufficient country, we do learn a lot from you. We do buy a lot from you. But that doesn't mean that a big country like India will not learn anything from a small country like the Philippines or buy anything from the Philippines. Now let's hear from our doctors and our hospitals in the Philippines. They also have a lot to share about what they're doing in the country. Our first speaker from the Philippines is Dr. Maria Corazon Consuni of the Makati Medical Center.
Okay. So my name is Dr. Kai Consunhi. I head Makati Medical Center. For those who are not Filipino, so Makati Med is a private hospital, 600-bed hospital. It's one of the most highly regarded hospitals. I hope everybody will agree to that. So I'm a pediatric critical care. It's a pediatric intensivist in training. I trained in the University of the Philippines, Philippine General Hospital, which Dr. Legaspi heads right now. But I subsequently trained in Johns Hopkins in the US. That's clinical, and then at that point in time, I decided to shift to the business side of medicine. So I did my master's, and that's how I ended up doing admin for hospitals. So three things. We're in the middle of, I think, healthcare transformation in the Philippines because of the universal healthcare that was signed last February. The IRR, the implementing rules and regulations, was signed October 10, just recently. So what does that mean? There's a push for the government to, cover better access to healthcare, quality care, financial coverage for more Filipinos. And later on, as we discuss that, you will know that there will be impact to on medications because there will be push towards generic drugs and capping of prices of medications and devices. So that's one, UHC. Number two, we're a country, 107, since that was account first quarter of 2019, a tenth of India. But three things that's going on: rise of communicable diseases, that's dengue, measles, and HIV. That will segue to drugs also covered for HIV, a law that was also signed recently to cover all treatment of HIV. One, communicable diseases, rise of non-communicable diseases, obesity, hypertension, mental health. And three, increasing lifespan. I think that's seen globally. So from 62 to 69 years old is what I've read. That's the life expectancy of Filipinos, and that will also affect all the treatment of private hospitals in the Philippines. I think those are the three most important things that I think will affect our things in the healthcare sector, and later on I have other things to share with.
All right, great. Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Legaspi from the Philippine General Hospital.
Thank you very much. I'm a neurosurgeon by specialty, and I always give a disclosure that my master's degree is in neurovascular diseases and at hospital administration. So I don't know what I'm talking about when I run the hospital. My hospital is a 112-year-old hospital. It's the National University Hospital connected, run and operated by the University of the Philippines. It's a 1,500-bed hospital with 400 paying patients. We see around 650,000 patients a year, and 120,000 of them are inpatients. My main difference from other CEOs of hospitals is my mandate is to make services available and to finish all the money that the government gives me. So that's a big challenge for us to do, to be able to equalize opportunities for our patients. So our goal, is to make sure that whatever the rich patients get, the poor patients in our hospital get too. So we are able to achieve that now with a combination of funding from the government and private donations. We are able to do robotic surgery for jeepney drivers. So we're able to give expensive IVIG treatment for housemaids, and more, and all of those with no out-of-pocket. Because we get penalized if our indigent patients buy anything from the fronting drugstore. So that's the biggest challenge we have from on our role. More so that the field health coverage, the coverage of the government insurance, only gives us 30% of what the patient actually will spend. So you can see now the challenge of trying to look for the 70% from friendly senators, congressmen, the DOH, the Department of Health, and the Social Welfare Department, and other private donations. So the other unique aspect of managing the Philippine General Hospital is the equally important function of training and research. I think the managers of hospital know that training hospitals are bleeding hospitals. So it costs a lot to train future doctors, and it costs a lot to do research. So I think the balancing of resources for both service and training and research will be a delicate one. As far as the pharma industry is concerned, us in government, we are our orientation is to doubt. And I think it is no secret that when you say the drugs coming in are from India, people will stop to think about the quality. I think that's one challenge that our Indian friends have to face. But because the prices are really very competitive, I think more and more are coming in now. In a fair bidding process, I think we have no objection to granting our supplies to the lowest bidder, of course. So I think the need of one hospital, just PGH, the need for meds and drugs every year is 2.2 billion pesos. So I think there's a huge number of bidding that we have to do and catching up with the needs of patients. Having said that, my father had multiple myeloma. It's a form of blood cancer. And he survived 6 years on thalidomide that I bought from India. So it's just really a matter of really choosing which suppliers to get. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, Dr. Legaspi, we do have signed agreements with India when it comes to pharmaceuticals, and the government worked hard to make that happen. I'm glad that your father is, lasted that long. So, friends from India, I think from the initial statements of our doctors from the Philippines and hospital administration from the Philippines, you can have a little bit more response based on what you can offer as partnership with us.
Yeah, I see the technology, the expertise is definitely available here. One area probably we have gone a step ahead than Philippines is as of now is affordability, like you brought it up. We can probably share our experience in how to keep the costs low. And affordability, like you said, will increase accessibility. We do a lot of work in this area to reduce wastage in our processes. Indian pharmaceutical industry, what Dr. mentioned, has been very helpful. A large portion of the medical care cost is from the pharmaceuticals, which has been kept low by the Indian pharmaceuticals. Plus, very importantly, the volumes play a role for us. The economies of scale kick in. At our hospitals, in Apollo hospitals, we do about 800 surgeries in a day. So that's a huge volume we are doing, so that keeps us costs low. We can definitely share more experiences on that. The other route we are taking to increase accessibility is using technology. So we focus a lot on telehealth services. We actually reach out to remote areas where we can provide solutions through telemedicine. We're also looking at, we are actually implementing the models of what we call eICU. We are now monitoring the ICUs remotely for many centers which may not have a 24/7 cover.
eICU is in electronic
ICU. So you may not have intensivist at an ICU in a remote location, and it's very costly to send one to remote location every time or have a full-time cover. But we can digitally monitor the parameters at our headquarters and see how we can help and give them directions on the medications. So affordability, how to keep costs low is one area. The other area where I see, I'm sure the challenges are same, not between India, Philippines, but globally. What Dr. K also highlighted, the rise of non-communicable diseases. If we all put our efforts only towards treatment of non-communicable disease, we may not be able to achieve success. So what we as Apollo in India are also focusing a lot of education and awareness. And we have just partnered with Microsoft actually to use the data to come up with artificial intelligence models to predict any ailment much earlier than it would actually produce a symptom, and see how we can prevent the disease rather than focusing on actually waiting for a tertiary ailment to happen and then offer cure to it. So these are some areas where we can probably work with the medical fraternity here and see people of Philippines also get everything at much affordable price.
Okay. Dr. Kai, Dr. Gap, are any of these available here already?
Oh, Hinder mentioned something that I've been wanting to start in. So Makati Med is part of the Metro Pacific Hospital Network Group. So there's 14, and you mentioned you have how many beds? You have
10,000 beds.
10,000 beds. We're aiming for 5,000 beds actually. So tele-ICU, you mentioned tele-ICU. I think that's where healthcare services should go, because especially in the Philippines, in Metro Manila, there are two things. In Metro Manila, traffic is horrible, and I think it's time that we start telemedicine, because there's a lot of things that can be diagnosed through, just, you don't need to be in front of the doctor to be able to be diagnosed adequately. And that can also be done for provincial setup, those without doctors, no nurses in the rural areas. I think telemedicine can actually be very helpful. Yeah, so that's one. And I was going to say electronic medical records also.
The digital IT
Digital,
solution.
yes, it's very important. I think data-driven decisions should be started. There's a lot of things that you can get by culling data, and that's something we already have that, but not all hospitals have, because it's very costly. But I think it's necessary to have EMR, and I think that can be, we can get that from India.
I'll just quickly put this IT solutions into two categories. One is using the IT solutions for your day-to-day operations, which will bring in efficiency. Like we are moving towards a paperless hospital. We are not yet there, but we are in that direction. It brings in efficiency, brings in speed, your records are kept. The other is the huge amount of data which you analyze, the data analytics, where I said Microsoft and we are working together to come up with predictive models. So both the IT solutions and your pharmaceutical companies and a few other things which can definitely help Philippines in making healthcare more affordable.
Mr. Prasad, you heard how much procurement the Philippine General Hospital does. What can you say about that?
You caught me the right question. I was getting prepared for another one. Okay, just for the record, I mean, we are already here. I mean, Aurolab and Arvind is already in the Philippines. Just to go back to your first question, you know, this is a learning forum for both India to Philippines and Philippines from India. Arvind's first training program was actually, our doctors were actually first trained in the Philippines. This was back about 20, 25 years back. So that's where the training starts. So as far as procurement is concerned, you know, one of the major challenges that we do face anywhere outside India, including India, and not just including Philippines, is the regulatory approvals. Today, you know, Aurolab is in about 160 countries. And all these countries have their own regulatory approvals, meaning that our facility has got to meet the standards and requirements of all these 160 countries. They are not harmonized. So what we are actually talking to the different governments is, yes, you definitely have to be strict and committed to the quality of the product you get in. But you also have to look at the cost that it is bringing to you, which we have tried to achieve in India, and we've been fairly successful. And that's one reason why a product in America costs about $100. You can get it for $1 in India. And you know, all these multinational companies which we do supply, you know, they do buy it at a fraction of a cost and do supply at that cost. So procurement from India, I want to stress, you know, it's just not Aurolab. Today, one of the reasons that, you know, there are 7 million cataract surgeries done in India today is because of such pharmaceutical companies, is because of these IOL industries that have brought down the cost of cataract surgery. Today, a cataract surgery in India can be done anywhere between from 500 pesos, you know, which is quality inclusive of consumable surgeries. So that is the remarkable role that the device manufacturing companies have done to India, and the same we know we can implement in any part of the world, including the US if they are open to it.
Okay. Dr. Gap, you want to say something?
Okay, I agree with that. We are probably the number one user of Indian IOLs because PhilHealth pays for it, and it's a lower priced one in our eye center. And it's just, I said, as I mentioned earlier, there's a big barrier that we have to cross when we open our bidding processes to all companies, and that is the ridiculously low price. Sometimes it makes it really doubtful, no? So I think we have to, on our side, we have to open our minds to the fact that it can really be lower price and still be quality.
I guess we also need Indian companies to educate us properly.
Yes.
Okay.
So the other one that is ridiculously low also is a liver transplant in India. And last year, Anupam Sibal was in my hospital. He gave a talk and we discussed about our drive to organize a liver transplant team in PGH, because the liver transplant team in another hospital is a little bit slow in the pediatric side because they don't have a pediatric unit in the National Kidney Center. So in that aspect, I think the relationship between India and the Philippines, and even in private hospitals, I think will be very fruitful because we don't have to reinvent the wheel. No, we don't have to relearn the hard way what they found out after thousands of patients, how they reduce to a third of the cost of what our patients will spend in the Philippines back in India, and with a higher, with more experience. So we'd like to jumpstart that, and I think if there's, I heard there's a strong push for liver transplant in 3 hospitals here.
Right, there is an agreement that was, I think, blessed by the government last night or yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Yesterday, right. So that's good news, and I think that's something that we can follow through. I am given the notice that we only have 5 minutes to this panel. Miss Aurora, you have something more to say. You really have a very interesting job. I mean, monitoring the effects of devices and medicine.
Actually, I represent SCPC also, Service
Right.
Export Promotion Council. So, generally, I wish to help in so many ways here. Like, we can train your people. It is not always mandatory that they should come to our place. There are something which we can teach you. There are so many things. What I really like about Philippines, it is my first visit to Philippines. People are really happy. You know, everybody is smiling, and this gives a, you know, relief to a person. And in healthcare, actually, we need some smiling faces. When somebody is coming to your to hospital, he is not in good mood. He is not happy to come to the hospital. So if he find good atmosphere, smiling faces, you know, I really love to have somebody in my hospital from Philippines. So actually, I would like to collaborate with Philippines on a larger scale, so we can help each other. Only one person cannot. Like, I think only India will do this, India will do that. It is not like that. Philippines can give us so many things which you are actually good. So when I am here sitting on this panel, I am finding, when I was listening to her, there are lots of things you people are doing. So we should learn a lot, and in my next visit, hopefully we will go for a big deal with you. Thank you.
All right. So I will ask the panel. Sorry, friends from the audience, we don't have time to ask you to get you to ask your question. But let me ask you to please 1 minute each, your last message about how we can collaborate strongly or more strongly. Can we start from the end now, Dr. Gap?
I think the first thing to do is for us to identify our urgent needs, most urgent need, because there are a lot. And I think our friends from both governments are able to do that from a managerial
Dr. Gap,
point
it's
of view.
okay to say your wish list now,
Okay.
your top 3.
Well, my top 3, one, of course, is for liver transplant. I think we had a lot of patients in need of it. Second is really quality, affordable medicines and implants for our patients. And number 3, of course, the transfer of technology and digital processes so that it will help us make our operations efficient also.
Excellent. Dr. Kai?
Certainly those things. I will just add one thing. I think India has, we can learn from the centers of excellence. You've got volumes, and with volume comes quality care. And I think the model that you have right now, we can learn a lot from that model. So I would love to see, and medical tourism. I mean, India does it very well also. Certainly we don't want to compete, but just learn how you do it very well.
Ms. Aurora?
Prevention is better than cure. My message to all, kindly do some yoga, take some preventive measures, go for jogging, laugh a lot, be healthy, so need not to go for any surgery or anything.
Thank you. Mr. Prasad?
Just a quick, just in a response to my Philippines friends. In India today, in our organization, you no longer, especially with regards to the Philippines, you have a big challenge of patients coming to the hospital, cost, logistics. So you start going to the patients. Better yet, what we've done in India, which is very, very much applicable to the Philippines, is setting up what we call as primary centers, right where the patient is there. In that way, and it's not manned by a doctor. It's manned by, in our case, it's manned by an optometrist, and we implement telemedicine there. So 80% of the local population is screened, and what is referred to the base hospital is only 20%. So that's the amount of economy giving back that you do. So that's the message. And since we've done 75 centers, we really know how to get that going, and it's not a big investment. And this is something that China is adopting as well.
Great. Dr. Harinder?
I'll just end by commenting on behalf of the Indian Healthcare Delegation and Fraternity. We are looking forward to establish this collaboration and working with doctor to start the liver transplant program. We have started that dialogue, like you said, but we'll make sure it happens very soon. Thank you.
All right, great. I hope you enjoyed that panel. Thank you very much to our panelists.
Again, thank you so much to our health and pharmaceuticals panel. We do hope that there's going to be a lot of transfer of technology to bring down the price of medicines and, of course, the liver transplants here in the Philippines. And as Dr. Aurora said, more yoga for everybody. And for the Filipinos, can you also go vegetarian at the same time to improve the quality of your health? Again, thank you so much. A round of applause, please, to our health and pharmaceuticals panel here this afternoon. Again, that's the third of 4 panels here tonight. And later on, we will have a great panel to wrap up everything in our last forum. But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, may we kindly invite everyone to please take your seats and to please turn your attention to our screen as we take another look back at the very significant events in the previous ASEAN India Business Summit. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats and watch this. Again, thank you so much to everybody joining us for the last part of the forum. Let's give all our speakers a round of applause. It was a great, valiant job. Thank you so much. The middle aisle, very full here today. Again, can we kindly invite our guests, if you don't mind, can we invite you to take your seats, or if not, please do take your discussions outside as we conclude with our last forum for this afternoon. And to start off our forum, may I please welcome the formidable chair of the Philippines of the AIBC and chairman of the Philippines-India Business Council, Mr. Johnny Chotrani. Ladies and gentlemen, we do invite everyone, please take this opportunity to network with your respective colleagues from the Philippines and from India, hopefully to grow the business. And we hope that this will be the first of many great Philippines-India business forums. Our past 3 sessions have been in digital technology, agriculture, and health and pharmaceuticals. And our last one is a strategic overview of the overall India-Philippines relations. And again, please welcome the very hardworking Mr. Johnny Chotrani.
Good evening, everybody. Excellencies, distinguished guests and speakers, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant good afternoon to all. It is my honor to formally open the proceedings of the 4th ASEAN-India Business Summit, a celebration of open doors and opportunity to prosper. And for the first time in my host country, Manila, Philippines. In the spirit of this historical event, we will be facilitating discussions on business, innovation, agriculture, and numerous other avenues of India-ASEAN interest. Looking back, we have already achieved so much. One of our most remarkable achievements is the ASEAN-India Partnership for Peace, Progress, and Shared Prosperity, a project that set out the roadmap of long-term ASEAN-India engagement, which was signed during the 3rd ASEAN-India Summit in 2004 in Vientiane, Laos. Furthermore, ASEAN and India have identified priority areas for period of 2016 to 2018 and are really implementing activities under it, which would contribute towards successful implementation of the 2016 to 2020 plan of action. These achievements are proof of how much the collaboration between our countries can accomplish. Together, with a common goal and a shared destiny, further strengthening the economic ties between ASEAN and India is within reach. And as we turn towards the present once more, let us briefly recap the matters that have been brought up. Early today, we have had the pleasure of distinguished panelists sharing their insights on issues within their field of expertise and the respective landscape. Today's panel was brainstormed to draw up potential initiatives to further improve the relations with ASEAN-India and where we might head as a group within the span of a decade. With the combined expertise of our esteemed panel, we managed to address a multitude of points that would otherwise have been left in the dust. More than anything, I would like to believe how fortunate we are to have these perspectives directly from the experts themselves. These people, with all of the qualifications and positions, arguably have the clearest view of the mechanism in place. Together, all of us are contributing to something much bigger than ourselves. The things we achieve here are going to greatly affect the dynamics of future relations. And I dare say, may prompt a golden age to benefit all of us who are currently involved. One of the ASEAN-India Business Council primary directive is to serve as a platform for the private sector to dialogue with the policymakers, tackling issues affecting the private sectors of both sides in doing business in ASEAN and India. And it is with hope and optimism that all of us will turn towards the future with genuine desire to continue to achieve even more. Before I reach the end of my remarks, I would like to share with you what Gandhi once said. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Thank you, and a pleasant afternoon to all of you.
And again, thank you so much, Chairman Johnny Chatrani, for furthering the ties between the ASEAN, the Philippines, and of course with India. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the conclusion of our forum with a special session on the ASEAN-India economic partnership in the next 10 or maybe even the next 100 years. This is indeed a very special event where the masters of various fields of study from both the Philippines and India get to converse and share their experiences and learnings, and hopefully we get to learn better from each other. We should consider that this is the first of many future occasions for both the Philippines and India to bond and learn from one another, especially from a business and economic relationship standpoint. Let's learn more from our very prominent guest over here, a good friend of the entrepreneurs here in the Philippines, a hardworking secretary, our Secretary of the Department of Trade and Industry. Please, a round of applause, Honorable Ramon M. Lopez. We also have the former Minister of Health of Malaysia, Mr. YBHG Datuk Seri Dr. S. Surabamyan. We have the former Senior Director of Ministry of International Trade and Industry of Malaysia, Mr. Datuk Rabindran Palanyapan. The Director of Commercial, Legal and HR of Malindo Air, Mr. Siva Kanan. The leader of the business delegation and CEO of GMR Construction, Mr. Vivek Singhal. And the Vice President for Corporate Development and the Head of International Relations of the Apollo Hospitals Group, making a second appearance here on the stage, Dr. Harinder Singh Sidhu. And this special forum will be moderated by a partner of AIBC Singapore and a lawyer at CNP Law. Please welcome Attorney Rabindran Ramasamy. Sir, please take it away.
Very good evening to everybody. Now, in the interest of saving time, because we got exactly 45 minutes to conclude this session, and being businessmen, we want to be efficient and we want to extract the best and the most out of our esteemed speakers. So what I intend to do is to kick off the session by a general question. Maybe Minister Ramon, you could start off by commenting on where do you see ASEAN economic relations in the next 10 years, and maybe perhaps cover some of the trade negotiations that are going on, especially RCEP, and do you see a prospect in it being concluded and how it will benefit business community in both ASEAN and India? Maybe you can start off.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's great to be here again. Regarding ASEAN, the future of ASEAN can only be stronger. As you may know, ASEAN has been working very hard to improve its integration. It's not a perfect integration. It's not like EU with a deeper kind of integration, but more or less we have an ASEAN economic community that has been there for maybe 2015, if I remember right. And we are going to the next phase as we try to elevate that kind of strong relationship among the 10 ASEAN member states to include now the 6 other ASEAN FTA partners. And when we talk of ASEAN FTA partners, we're basically referring to countries around ASEAN. So it will include big economies like India, China, and you have superpowers like Japan, South Korea, and down south we have the Australia and New Zealand. So all in all, of course, this is what we are now calling RCEP, or Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. And if we are to integrate this, this will cover about 1/2 of the world's population, 1/3 of the world's economy, 1/4 of the world's exports, and definitely a huge, huge potential as a major economic bloc in this part of the world. You've heard of the TPP that became CPTPP minus the US, which is one major bloc as well. There are other unions and FTA, but this part of the world certainly, the RCEP is a big potential. What it does offer is definitely a set of more concessions, more inclusion of products and lower tariff rates for as many products as possible compared to the existing ASEAN relationship with these FTA partners. So it's what we call level up kind of relationship. And that's the reason why it's taking a bit of a long time, because while ASEAN has an FTA with each of these countries, not all the 6 would have FTAs among themselves, and that's the tricky part. As we are doing negotiations with each country and leveling up our concessions, the other countries that still don't have an FTA are basically just working on how can we now offer immediately to the level of about 90% liberalization, 90% of their product. That's so huge, and especially when you talk of India and China, 2 big economies in terms of size and in terms of population, both about 1.3 billion. So imagine the giants in the world. So it's a bit tricky, and that's the reason why it has taken about 7 years, and the ministers are really pressured to advance the talks and essentially draw to a conclusion, and hopefully reaching that conclusion in the Leaders Summit, forthcoming Leaders Summit, first week of November. And if you ask about that RCEP, the possibility of concluding RCEP, definitely the commitment of all ministers, the commitment is there, and that we all want conclusion, and we've been doing so many intersessional, the meetings in between the regular meetings, and so that we can really just advance the talks. And I guess the good news is that there's about 20 chapters out of the 25 concluded. So, and we hope to settle the remaining 5. But I guess what this all tells us is, and with that, we are more confident that there can be a positive announcement to be done by the ministers. Of course, there are still challenges. It won't be an easy walk in the park towards November. And this is what all the negotiators and the ministers are working on, so that we can really pin down and close many sections and hopefully draw to that conclusion. Once we have the RCEP, and I mentioned the magnitude earlier, this definitely will open more doors for many of us. When you talk of India and you talk of Philippines, India is like 7 hours away. And you look at Philippines as so far away, literally far east. And if you look at the map, India is somewhere, if you make India as the center, you can really see Europe to your left and really Philippines on the far right. After Philippines, there's nothing except Pacific Ocean. So that's the reason why we could all imagine that our India probably is not really looking that far, oftentimes. Of course, the farthest probably you can look at would be Singapore and Hong Kong, no? And that's just about 3 hours away. And I was talking to one of the delegates last night, and he said that even for common business trips, conference venues, talking to business people, as well as your holidays, you usually could reach only up to Singapore, because that's just about 3 to maybe 4 hours away. Anything beyond that is considered far. And unfortunately, we are beyond that. So what I'm saying is that the distance is far, and therefore we really have to make an extra effort. Make an extra effort to open up more trade, talk to as many business people as possible, increase the venues for for interaction, business matching, and that's what we're seeing now. And with the visit of President Kovin, certainly all the frequency of these meetings has really improved. And of course, once we conclude that RCEP, definitely it will open more market access for our products. So it will be easier for Philippines, hopefully, to sell to India and vice versa, India entering the Philippines. And by the way, RCEP is not just about trade. It talks about investments as well. It talks about services, trade in services. So definitely it's a wide spectrum of cooperation and integration, which is what we really need if we are to really level up the relationship that we have. As I said, there has to be that commitment to really invest more, and that there is also the business environment that will make the accessibility more open. And in that way, we can see a brighter future, stronger relationship between our two countries. I can go to the industries later, but just to keep the opening short. Thank you.
Much obliged.
And just to acknowledge the presence on stage now of the Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship, the Honorable Joey Concepcion. A round of applause, please. Attorney.
Maybe what we can do is we can move on to the next topic of health. Maybe Dr. Subra, perhaps you can share with us, how do you see the health sector in both ASEAN and India? Perhaps you can give us some pointers of where businessmen can look for opportunities.
Thanks, Ravi. Nice meeting you on a different stage. I would like to look at health in a non-conventional way. You see, when we talk about health between ASEAN and India, the normal thinking is of how to improve import of drugs, how to have access to generic medications, and that kind of standard thoughts. I want to think something quite different from this, as looking at what is happening to health on a global perspective, and how are we going to actually see and overcome these weaknesses which exist, and how we can capitalize on the new opportunities which will come. First, I am sure those who are related to the health industry will agree with me. Our current health system throughout the world is an imperfect system. It's an imperfect system with a lot of weaknesses. And these weaknesses come because of the tools which existed all this while. And within those tools, it was not possible to overcome the weaknesses. One, there is tremendous variation in care for individuals, depending on where they get the care from, the one in a rural area and an urban area. Within an urban area, from hospital A to hospital B, within hospital B, between Dr. A to Dr. B, there is tremendous variation. This tremendous variation in the outcomes of healthcare is because of the current systems which we have. Then the other thing which is there is the way healthcare has evolved over the years is to look at the population as one entity. So we have created products on the assumption that if you give the product to 1,000 people, their 1,000 people will react similarly. But unfortunately, it's not the same. If you look, populations is fragmentized. Every person is individual, is different. And healthcare, in its attempt to approach this, has so far probably coming nearer and nearer to it, but has not reached that. So because of this, because of these variations and because of the differences, there's actually wastage. The huge amount of wastage in healthcare. For example, if a person fails a diagnosis in one setup and he's failed treatment and takes another year before he's finally diagnosed with an ailment, the period which is spent within the year, the amount of money wasted is a wastage. Globally, that amount of money is huge. That amount of money is huge. The wastage in healthcare because of these huge variations, even between people. Because fortunate or unfortunate, historically, healthcare has been plagued by the ego of the individual, who always felt that they knew what they were doing, you know. When I was a student in the University of Singapore, we used to have a professor who used to walk in the ward and said, "I can smell typhoid." So we have come from those days, when people had views which were so archaic to a different situation. So how are we going to overcome this? This is very, very important. There's a lot of things. First of all, we have better tools. We have better tools, and then the digital economy has pervaded into the health sector. And just to give you a few examples, is one, of course, is data. You see, we have now the capacity to get the data of every possible individual on a country or village or on earth together to give a huge amount of information. And this huge amount of information of individuals, their variability, their responses to different things, when gathered into big data and subsequently aligned with artificial intelligence, produces a tremendous amount of potentials. Tremendous amount of potentials in the sense that, one, it can now reduce the variation among doctors. It can give protocols to doctors. If patient A comes and this is this, you do this. If this is that, look at that. Because this information which has been collated from a huge amount of people gives an opportunity to create protocols which can be reproduced. Not here, everywhere, it's a reproducible protocols. And the availability of such reproducible protocols will ensure that the variations which exist within the system can be reduced. And with that, you come with other things like artificial intelligence will even tell you if you have 4 types of medications for diabetes, if you have the population is divided into 4 groups, group A might benefit from which, group B might benefit from it, group C might benefit, group D might benefit from it, and that is going to reduce the chance of this particular individual who probably would have gone from A, B, C, and D before he actually comes to the one which works for him. From the very beginning, he might go to the product which is actually useful for him. So that is, and this is one aspect of data, artificial intelligence. Then we got tremendous of our tools which actually empowering patients now. For example, apps which are health related, which can the provider, the clinician can use, and the patient can give back information to the provider, and this empowers the patient and empowers the provider, so the management becomes more holistic. So the presence of these apps and amplified by the presence of wearable devices. Now there's tremendous amount of wearable devices which are coming, which can monitor BP on a continuous basis. Devices are now in the development for monitoring blood pressure variations throughout the 24 hours. So when all these are collated into a system, then of course the patient becomes empowered and there's the information. And along that is what India has done in a big way is telemedicine, where access can be increased. Even though in distance people with good quality telemedicine, where even images can be seen and pictures can be seen with clarity as good as being next to the patient, and without now actually a lot of countries in different parts of the world are actually recognizing telemedication consultancy as a consultancy which is reimbursable. So with those things, of course, there's another tool. So what I'm trying to suggest to the ASEAN business community, particularly the health entrepreneurs, is rather than thinking of the conventional things, you need to look at the new things. You have to new things, and there's a tremendous amount of potential. I think the expertise within India, the expertise within the ASEAN countries, the population demographic which we have between the countries, the genetic diversity which we have within ourselves, if this can be collated, and those information can actually become part and parcel of a single information, then of course that actually is the biggest tool you have. And because a lot of businessmen, they will ask me, hey, can I make money out of this? Of course there's money in it. I think there's tremendous amount of money in it. I think the telemedicine initiative in India is calculated about 200 billion or something like that. The overall pervasiveness of the other technologies, apart from reducing wastage, is also creating new opportunities. So unless we think out of the box, And rather than the last few days, I'm thinking, talking to them, still the mindset is how to have taxes, how to have tariffs, how to have companies coming in. That I think there's a need for some kind of destructive changes. So I think that's my input and what you do in health and how to move forward with health.
Very good suggestions. In fact, in Singapore, what we do in the public hospitals, when you go for an X-ray, once it's taken, it's sent to India, and within half an hour, they give you a report. That's how fast it is. And with Libra patch now, your doctor is happy because every 10 days, your diabetes readings are kept and the doctor can access to it. Now, Mr. Joey Concepcion, we're very obliged that despite your emergency, you are able to join us. Thank you for joining us. Perhaps you could share with us, how do you see India economic relations over the next 10 years, and do you see any areas of special focus that business community can take advantage of, and where you think we got a niche as compared to other parts of the globe?
Well, looking at the ASEAN region, 10 countries, 7 countries are still challenged with quite a large poverty problem. Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei are maybe exempted from that challenge. And during my chairmanship in the Philippines, when we hosted our campaign was really creating for prosperity for all. In the end, if the region, ASEAN region, the 10 countries cannot really adopt a strategy in order to really make the region more inclusive, then trade will not really prosper, because as countries can have a challenge in competing with others, and if they're challenged with the level of poverty, their legislators in Congress and in Senate will object to really opening up the economy. So when I look at the Philippines, the areas of focus really in trying to make our country more inclusive is to really focus on agriculture, tourism, and digitalization. It's basically common in the same 7 countries that are challenged with poverty. Why do I say agriculture? In the Philippines, bulk of our micro and small entrepreneurs belong to that sector. In tourism, it also presents the greatest opportunity. Your country basically is involved here. I mean, Prasad Seeds has a facility down in central Luzon producing hybrid seeds, basically, that is a technology that is needed, since now we have allowed rice import liberalization to happen in this country, and our farmers are really challenged with their high cost to produce. It changes the mindset. No? In other words, being a protectionist somehow leads to inefficiency, and our rice farmers are not as productive as the other countries. So technologies such as hybrid seeds will enable them. When you look at tourism, the partnership with GMR and Megawide, basically, airports are critical in bringing the country forward to having more tourists. I've seen your airport in India, it's huge. And digitalization, there's no disagreement that the Indians are superior. I mean, you guys are all over the world in this field. You're gifted with a lot of mathematicians, and that is important. And I believe that digitalization is going to be the game changer for many countries, because it allows a greater inclusivity in the economy. In other words, many of us who are in the offline will lose control. You can see that in America. So that forces offline to adopt online, or else they get disrupted. And at the process of adopting online, you can see the different applications that have supported and helped a lot of entrepreneurs in this country, because they have basically access to the market through these apps. Grab, Lazada, Shopee, different apps are now in the Philippines, and it's going to just continue to explode. In the money side, access to funding, you don't, down the road, fintech will provide that opportunity for the consumers, basically, to be able to access credit. In the end, being a cashless society is the way forward, because 2 aspects. You have data on people transacting, which has happened in America, credit cards. So when you have data, you can now lend. People will determine who are bankable and who are not bankable. So I think, to my mind, in the Philippines, these areas of agriculture, tourism, and digitalization, and emphasis in digitalization, that will spur even trade across the board. And you can imagine the 50 states of America on Amazon. I mean, it's such a powerful application. So this is how I believe the way forward, that the region, ASEAN 10 countries, we've basically over 50 years already being together, has to progress. And in the end, digitalization is just going to force everybody to really open up. There is no way out of that. And trade will prosper. It is going to, tariffs will have to be reduced if you really want to have free trade, no? And let the people compete. But you've provided a marketplace that is fair, that is not controlled by 1, 5, 10 families. No? It is going to be controlled basically by the platform. And you have true democracy because the consumer, who either sells his service as a massage therapist or he sells a product, has the freedom to sell it directly to the consumer. And that's real democracy. And that's what I believe the real benefit of the fourth IR will bring about. Another credit to India is that this morning the Indian Chamber here had an event with the patients, the little kids who had a liver transplant. I had the opportunity in visiting the hospital. I think it's called Max. And my God, you guys do it so much cheaper than us in the Philippines in liver transplant. You're able to even provide medicines so much cheaper than anyone. And these kids have to spend about 2,000 pesos. That's about maybe $10 or $20 a day after the liver transplant to be able to sustain and that that organ that doesn't get into a problem. So, and they have to take that for life. So the only way is to bring your medicines to this country. In the last state visit, I remember some of the colleagues here were bringing your medicines from India here in their bags. No? So I think even in the Philippines, we have to talk to our Department of Health and FDA to really allow these medicines to come in. No? So this is what I feel that India can help the region and the Philippines.
Those are very good comments, sir. And actually, for the benefit of everybody here, 45% of the employment sector in India is actually belongs to the agriculture sector. And 7 out of 10 ASEAN countries, 25% of the employment is in the rural sector. And actually, when you're talking about medicine, I can confirm that this morning I had to go and get some metformin for somebody, and it was something like 70 cents a piece. And I tell you, for $1, you can get about 40 or 50 pieces in India. That's how cheap it is. So I think that's one sector for businessmen to take note. Now, moving on to infrastructure. So I would like to invite Mr. Vivek Singhal, who is the CEO of GMR. Perhaps you can share with us where do you see the opportunities in infrastructure in ASEAN, and maybe give us some pointers on where do you think businessmen can focus.
First of all, I like to comment on Mr. Joy's. He has summarized very well, and I want to put my answer in 2 baskets. First thing is that linkage between the ASEAN countries. How to link these countries? We are talking about poverty elevation, healthcare, etc., etc., and we have given the example of Singapore. So first of all, we need to see how the distance can become shorter. And in this regard, we see that the government of India, they have launched multimodal transport system, Kaladan, and this trilateral highway system among some of the Asian countries. Similar way, how we can increase direct flight between Philippines and India, because this will really change the game. So this is first part of the connectivity, how we can do the sea-link connectivity with the ports, with the airports. This will enhance the economy and the relationships. The second part is a live example what GMR has really proven in this country. So with the government initiative, this job has been, project has been, first time it has been launched in a way that, and we have won this project along with Megabyte. And the capacity has been enhanced from 6 million to 16 million. And later phase it will be 22 million. So how it has changed? As the capacity increased, traffic increased. As the traffic increased, you see the China and Japan tourism is gone double. Since that is double, the local economy is getting benefited. Hotel rooms are getting almost 95% occupancy is there. Since that is happening, the regional development has started with the connectivity with the roads, ports, etc. And if you see one project capitalized, it is giving about 1% of the economy's GDP. It is increasing. Similarly, we are seeing what is happening in the Clark. We won the second project, which is double the size, and it is doing wonderfully good. And you see what is happening around Clark City. The airport is bringing the whole of the new Clark City development, where the government has taken a beautiful initiative of creating the smart city, how the people can live better life. It is being connected with the highways, and later on the high speed will also come. So this whole new city satellite town is getting created. So I can see there is a lot of initiatives coming out from the government. I will also recommend that further how we can introduce more PPP in the infrastructure, not only in the airports, but also in the MRT system, mass rapid transport systems, as well as the hybrid and native systems. If we can introduce in the country, this will enhance, because this is the same model on which India has taken a lot of initiatives and then built up their infrastructure in the last 5-10 years. Thank you.
Good comments. Actually, we noticed that India has been quite aggressive in creating infrastructure projects. They are developing the Sidway port. And now I think they've taken on to develop a port Sabang in Indonesia also. So perhaps people can give feedback back to the Indian government that perhaps they should do a big infrastructure project in Philippines also, especially in the area of port connectivity. But there is definitely a lot of scope in infrastructure projects. Moving on, maybe I can invite Dato Ravi from Malaysia to perhaps give us some guidance on where do you see the business sector benefiting in the next 10 years?
Well, I think let me start by saying there's a lot of similarities of what's happening in ASEAN and in India. First of all, within ASEAN, we have the AEC 2025, as explained by the Minister earlier on. We are strengthening and deepening our economic integration. When you talk about integration, means that we are removing the barriers to trade and to factors of production. And of course, in that process, the AEC is not just talking about liberalization, but it also talks about inclusivity. We are empowering our young population. And of course, in the current economic environment, we have digitalization which has come in. If you look at India, what they are doing, India, if you see PM Modi has mentioned about transforming Indian economy to become a $5 trillion economy. India is also focusing very much on the economic development in the rural areas, and of course infrastructure development. You talked about connectivity, and of course India is also talking about the young population. Both ASEAN and India share one common similarity, which is we both have young population. So to me, if you talk about economic integration, I think the governments have put in the necessary framework. We have the ASEAN-India Free Trade Agreement in place, not just for the goods, but for services and investment. Of course, we are now negotiating RCEP, as the Minister has explained. I myself have been actively involved in 24 rounds of RCEP negotiations, and I would reiterate again that RCEP, the perspective outside there is that it is China-driven and only China will benefit from RCEP. I think that's the mindset change we must move away from. RCEP, to my mind, has got the necessary flexibility built in. Each and every country has sensitivities that they need to take care of. It's just not India having sensitivity. I think China has equally a sensitivity. So has Malaysia, and so has the Philippines. So I think RCEP, to me, in the current economic environment, with what's happening with the war between, trade conflict between the US and China, I think we need to expedite. I would call for a strong political will for the early conclusion. We are almost there, but it's not going to be easy to take through the last mile. It's going to be very challenging. But if we conclude RCEP, let me say RCEP is not just about liberalization. RCEP has got many other chapters that talks about facilitation. And I would like to emphasize, that it's also time for ASEAN to look at facilitation, customs, procedures, rules and regulation, SPS, TBT, standards. I think these are areas that we need to really focus on, because for the private sector today, it's not about reducing tariffs. If the tariff goes down to zero and you have what you call non-tariff barriers, it's meaningless. And for the SMEs today, I would say it's very challenging doing business. And that's one of the things that I would suggest that both the governments of ASEAN as well as the RCEP participating countries, that we need to now move away from this perspective of always talking about liberalization, but to look and focus on how do we give more priority to the issue of trade facilitation. Regulatory barriers really need to be addressed. But I'm very optimistic that what we are doing in ASEAN and what we are doing under various FTAs, that the opportunities are here. And if we can overcome some of these regulatory barriers, I would see there's tremendous potential. I also want to say to my Indian colleagues here that, please don't look at trade deficit, because trade deficit, every country has trade deficit with someone. It cannot be one country having trade surplus with the rest of the world. It's not going to happen. Trade deficit will be there, but we need to address that trade deficit through increasing our own exports. So trade deficit alone should not be looked at as a factor in trying to move away from RCEP. I would say even if RCEP takes another 6 months, it's okay, but let's have all the 16 countries be involved in the RCEP, because excluding any one particular country from RCEP will not be, then I would say RCEP would be a failure similar to TPP, because TPP without the US is also meaningless to some of us. So in that context, I would say that today, I think my final comment would be the mindset change of the business community in ASEAN as well as India. If you talk to someone in ASEAN, he say doing business with India is extremely difficult. If you talk to the Indian businessman, he say doing business in ASEAN is also extremely difficult. So I think we need to move away from this mindset, because we need to create a new narrative for the younger population. We need to build trust that, ASEAN is a land of opportunity. We attracted $154 billion of investment last year. So if we can attract $154 billion of investment, foreign direct investment, that means ASEAN is a land of tremendous opportunity. Compared to India, I think FDI flow to India last year was about 50 billion. So if you look at ASEAN, don't assume that India is only the land of opportunity, but ASEAN is also a land of opportunity. So we must try and create this mindset change among our younger generation, because they are going to be the future anyway. And with that, I believe that we will see the ASEAN-India trade, which is now somewhere around $80 billion. I think we should work towards actually making ASEAN-India trade and investment flows to something like a $500 billion trade, and not just sticking at 80 billion. It's actually hardly, when you compare it to our trade with China or US, it's very, very insignificant. Thank you, sir.
Trade numbers are about 90 billion currently between ASEAN and India. But it's okay. I think the race to the tip is there, and we're all looking forward to the early conclusion of RCEP. And I think we in ASEAN, being in the central position, will certainly benefit. Now, what I would like to do is I would like to invite Mr. Dr. Harinder Singh perhaps to take 2-3 minutes to comment on where do you see the medical sector, since you are involved in the medical sector.
Thank you very much. First I'd like to share a thought that one of the great things which I see all our countries, India and ASEAN, are looking at bilateral, multilateral economic partnerships. But one thing is common. All of us have healthcare as a high priority. So this is something which we should work together to make sure we achieve. Traditionally, all our countries have been looking at first coming up with the right treatment options for various ailments. We've seen the rise of non-communicable disease, lifestyle disease in the last 10-15 years. What I believe we have actually reached a stage of expertise in the treatment for most of the options. Where we have to now move is actually making these expertise accessible and affordable. And the Honorable Minister very nicely highlighted the disruptive models for delivery of healthcare which we have to look at. Digitalization being one, where we can use more of technology and see how we can reach out to remote areas, limit the need for anybody to come to a high-end center, and see how we can use this more across the geographies. And the second is how we can share between us the expertise we have developed individually. Like India has fortunately been able to do very well in the pharmaceutical industry, with the largest provider of generic medicines globally. We can definitely share that know-how, not only bringing medicines here, but we should, as Indian industry, we should probably set up new plants here to actually have manufacturing here. And the other aspect we like to say that all of us are actually fighting against a common enemy, again the NCDs, and we can't win this war with treatment. So we all have to go towards the mindset of preventive medicine. So we as India, as the Polo Hospitals, we are the largest provider. We have initiated this project in our group in India, is we are actually focusing a lot and spending our resources on awareness, early detection, education. And we have partnered, like the Honorable Minister highlight, the use of data. So we are doing a lot of data analytics. And we are working with Microsoft, with Apollo having the largest data and Microsoft bringing the IT capability. We are actually coming up with more predictive models to actually be applied on individually who are as of now healthy or do not have a symptom, to predict any possibility of enablement and prevent that. So we have to look at new models for healthcare delivery to make it affordable, but on the same note, focus and change our mindset towards healthy lifestyle prevention rather than putting all our energy in treatment protocols.
Thank you. Perhaps Mr. Siva, you are from Malindo Air. Maybe you can share with us your experience in how do we increase connectivity between India and ASEAN, particularly countries like Laos, Philippines, and some other parts of ASEAN which are not yet connected. Where do you see the challenges and the opportunities?
Thank you, Mr. Ravi. Just to start off, my organization itself is a creation of ASEAN. It's a partnership between Indonesian and Malaysian business entities. Likewise, we also have a competitor on the scene pretty much across the Asia-Pacific region, which is AirAsia Group, which is also sort of like taken on a Pan-Asia or a Pan-Asia-Pac kind of entity that they have projected. So what's been happening is within the world of airlines is that the ownership of airlines in the region, not just in the region but across the world, has been evolving tremendously. What used to be the forte of governments, national flag carriers, those are now becoming legacies or histories. Whereas what is happening today are entrepreneurs across the region, both in India as well as in ASEAN, who are sort of spearheading, who are evolving, who are creating newer entities. I mean, 15 years back, 10 years back, you never had an Indigo. Today it's probably one of the largest carriers in India, and it's now beginning to reach out across to the ASEAN countries, in some of the ASEAN countries. Likewise, our company, we sort of fly into about, we have like about 55 weekly flights into 10 cities in India. And we have about 550 flights per week across ASEAN. So across 8 or 9 ASEAN countries, we have still not covered the full length and breadth. So that's one thing, that's how the ownership, the structure of the aviation industry has evolved. The second thing that's pertinent to note is, or sadly, is that we are still regulated and governed by 20th century architecture or regulatory regimes, which actually thwart the growth further of or the harmonization of linkages between countries. For all the mention of trade, tourism, development, etc., you need connectivity. And that connectivity used to be the forte of governments. And that's how agreements used to be structured, as bilateral agreements. I give you 500 seats per week into your country, for your carriers into my country. You reciprocate with another 500. That has been the model, and that is still pretty much the model today. But how that model has sort of like been a disadvantage for business, for the growth of businesses. If you look at it from the Indian perspective, the Indian side, just take a case in point, the bilaterals between Malaysia and India. This has never been revised in over a decade. And I'm sure that is the similar story across if you take each one of the ASEAN countries with India. Why this has happened is because Indian side has not been able to fulfill its part of the bargain. Whereas on the Malaysian side, we've been able to fulfill all our obligations. And we are hungry, waiting for more capacity, but we just don't have. So this is going to be the biggest challenge for airlines in the region to connect with India. And yeah, possibly it's actually a challenge for countries like Singapore, for countries like Thailand, for countries like Malaysia. These three countries have completely exhausted the utilization of the bilaterals. The other countries, the other 7 countries within ASEAN have yet to sort of venture into that path. And for all that, in fact, one of the first things that caught my eye today when I flew in was there was this advert by, I believe, an Indian IT firm, Personative, I think, which is an outsourced entity here. But sadly, there's no connectivity between India and Philippines. And we are all eager, but we are all bound, constrained by, and restrained by regulatory regime which is still in the 20th century. So that's something that, and where I want to take you to is just look for a moment. We've actually got about 9 within, it's not just within ASEAN, but within Asia Pac. We've got about an install or a current capacity of about 9,800 aircrafts that are part of existing fleet. And that's already more than the EU today. And the EU with its open skies serves a population of about 550 million people. ASEAN with a population of about 650 million does not have open skies, and we are unable to match that, we are unable to provide that connectivity, sadly because of regulatory constraints.
Yeah, I see this problem because even within ASEAN we're having problem trying to get this open skies agreement, and sometimes from an India-ASEAN perspective, when we try to push the Indians to have an open skies agreement, we do have the challenge. But
interestingly, sorry if I may add.
Okay, sure.
Interestingly, India struck a deal with the EU. It's a horizontal sort of an agreement which went past the bilaterals, or working around the bilaterals to take into consideration EU law. So that enables any airline from any country within the EU member nation to operate flights into India and vice versa. We could possibly think along those lines. Yes, we have an ASEAN open skies, but we need to create that kind of a connectivity with India if we want to see that growth.
I think
and that's tremendous.
That's a very valuable suggestion for the policymakers to take note. But I've been warned that microphone may be turned off any moment because our time has come up. Now it only leaves me to thank the excellencies for their time off and our distinguished guest panel members for their time off to present their way forward, where you see ASEAN India moving forward and how the business community can benefit. I would also like to thank Dato Ramesh Kodaimal, the chairman of, co-chair of the ASEAN India Business Council, and also the chairman of the Philippine chair of the AIBC, Mr. Johnny Chotrani, and all the organizers who have contributed to put together the 4th ASEAN India Business Summit. I think it has been an excellent occasion, and for all the visitors who have come from abroad, we have been enjoying the hospitality of Philippines and the Philippines people, and I would like to take the opportunity for looking after us well and for taking care of all our needs. And it only leaves me to thank everybody once again. Have a good evening, and please join us for the dinner later on. Thank you very much.
Attorney, thank you so much. And This concludes our fourth ASEAN-India Business Summit. Let's give a round of applause, please, to all of our esteemed panel discussants here on stage. Looking forward to a bigger, brighter, and more vibrant fifth ASEAN Business Summit next year. Again, thank you so much to all of our dignitaries on stage. The Honorable Ramon M. Lopez, Mr. YBHD Datuk Seri Dr. S. Subaramian, Mr. Siva Kanan, Mr. Dr. Harinder Singh Sidhu, Mr. Vivek Singhal, Mr. Datuk Ravidran Palapyanan, and of course, Presidential Advisor Joey Concepcion. And with that, we request all of our discussants to stay here on stage for the token of appreciation to be given by the Honorable Dato Ramesh Kodamal. And again, thank you so much to all of our distinguished speakers and to Dato Ramesh Kodamal. Round of applause, please. Thank you again so much to all of our speakers. And we all definitely learned a lot today. Hopefully this ushers in a new period in India-Philippines business relations and India-ASEAN business relations. I do hope that this becomes the spearheading activity for more avenues of discussion amongst and between the Philippines, India, and the rest of the ASEAN. And with that, dear guests, may we kindly invite our guests to please proceed to the second part of today's program. Please join us at the Rizal Ballroom at the second floor of the Makati Shangri-La. Again, we invite our guests to please proceed to the second floor of the Makati Shangri-La. Again, I've been your Master of Ceremonies, RJ Ledesma. With this, we thank you all for joining us here today. Mabuhay, namaste. Thank you very much.